Well, what it do, ladies and gentlemen? Waiting for a few more people to get in the room so we can get this conversation started. Happy New Year to everybody. Yeah, PK on deck. Really finna bring to the forefront some of the conversations that we have in private because we think that they are duly important and actually advantageous and beneficial for our lives in a real way. So, you know, we are having this discussion on free will, to be or not to be. Cedric, what's going on? Pseudo killer official in the building. How you doing?
What it do, what it do, what it do, Juju. Happy New Year's to you. Happy New Year's to everybody in the chat and everybody out there in YouTube land. Yeah, we starting off the year um, um, with a real topic worth discussing, and we've been having these discussions in the Discord for a while now, and it's about the concept or the idea of free will, and of course. As a naturalist and as someone that is firmly rooted in methodological naturalism, it is obvious which position I take on the subject matter, which is no, there is no such thing.
No such things as what? Be clear for the
Uh,
people.
There is no such thing as free will. We, by means of the brain conversation, we know that the brain primary function is body budgeting. As a result of body budgeting uh, uh, and the complexity of the brain, we have developed uh, the illusion of having the freedom to choose what we want, and this is all based in dualism, which is a philosophical standpoint that mind and body are separate from each other. And now, being rooted in naturalism, I completely oppose that position. Nature has proven itself to be causal,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and by it being influenced by the four fundamental forces, nature operates in a deterministic fashion. However, we cannot exclude the amount of variables that are involved in any one given process, which creates the illusion of randomness, because these variables all have a range of variability within the variables, within the
Mm-hmm.
different parameters. So the illusion of randomness is there. We can never predetermine the outcome. For example, evolution is a process in which we understand it based on hindsight. But to determine what and how our species, for example, humans, will evolve into, there is no way that we can predetermine what we are going to look like or be in 100,000 years from now, just because the amount of variables included in that process. So
Okay.
we have the illusion of free will, and based on philosophical process which we just simply reason and argued how the brain work and how we tend to make decisions
Right.
uh, in a more primitive time, and I want to say primitive in the sense of the scientific advances that we have today.
Right.
Our our society was structured around this hypothesis. Why was it just a hypothesis? We had no way to actually do any type of testing and analysis to see if this hypothesis bared fruit in reality. With the advent of modern science and the technology that we have, and our ability to map the brain, and just our overall understanding of how nature works, we are now able to test this hypothesis, and we've seen through the works of different scholars that nature operates deterministic. There is no way to exclude causal factors in our decision making process.
I agree with you on that, especially about the causal nature. But before we go any further, we do have quite a more people that have joined us. I kind of did this abruptly. We were going to go on Clubhouse, but I want to introduce it here first. And then maybe we can get the conversation going on Clubhouse. But we have some pseudo killers in the building and pseudo killer army. So I also want to go to next is Series B, just to give us your understanding or idea on the conversation. And I'll let everybody have a go at it, and then we can get into it more because we do have an ensuing debate coming up soon between Logic, Pseudo Killer Army, and Pseudo Killer Official Chilemwe or Marcus. And this conversation has been going on for quite some time. Extremely interesting, extremely intricate, and yeah, we just want to get a pop 'em. Sirius B, holla at the people. How you doing? Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Peace, peace to all. I tell you what, in this particular conversation, I'm more of a spectator, listening and taking notes myself.
Okay,
Right?
right.
I've had some conversations with Cedric Ortega. Have had the conversations with Logic. Hold on just a second. I think I have something up.
Or everybody else, please.
Or
mute
everybody
while
else,
Evelyn-
please mute. All right, so I'm gonna take. Yeah, I think I had YouTube up, so
Okay,
I just yep. So I just took that down. But yeah, in terms of looking at, okay, well, what is the difference between fatalism and the determinism? Me and Cedric actually had a really good conversation about the whole idea of randomness, right?
Right.
From a scientific perspective, is
Okay.
randomness even really a thing?
Right.
In terms of randomness, if you talk about the unfathomable, level of variables within a system, right? If you can't fathom the number of variables that go into an outcome, right? Is that something that's truly random?
Right.
We don't even know. I don't think we even know, right? I even went to the extent of taking a look and researching the random number generators, right?
Okay.
Because I'm a tech guy, right? You say, okay, well, how do random number generators are something that are very essential in particular computer programs and in technical operations. But in reality, those random number generators aren't really random. Though that it's pseudo randomness that we introduce through algorithms. But when you understand the algorithm, you can actually predict the outcome of the numbers. So these are the things that are really interesting to me. So this is a really good conversation for me. So again, right, philosophy is really squishy to me. It's like six and a half dozen. So I'm just listening, but it's a great conversation.
I'm a little bit listening and involved, but lots of listening, right? There's lots of intricacies in this conversation. As people, we only heard from two people, Cedric and Sirius B, so you already can hear how it's going. What's up, God Killer? I'm saving the best.
What I would like to say is how y'all doing to the panel.
What's up?
I'm
Happy
saying
New Year.
that Happy New Year's. There's a virus going around. Get vaccinated.
Yeah.
And it's called maniac, mental maniac. We heard of Egyptomania. Well, this is mental maniac. Watch how I go. Right?
Okay.
I've taken my vaccine and I'm just actually listening.
You're
so
petty.
I'm gonna let you know. And whatever conclusions they come to, I will have to make this statement. No matter what, you could never convince me that every day that I wake up, you know what I'm saying, I have not made a choice, you know what I'm saying, on how I want to live. I'm gonna speak for, I think I have that power to choose to be an asshole, to choose to be a drug addict, and choose to be sober. And I don't think there's a human being on this earth could ever convince me. So I already know the style of this conversation.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, moving on to Lady Killer herself, Pseudo Killer official, Miss Tiffany. Hey sis, give me a take on what we got going on here with this conversation today.
Oh, well, we've been having this conversation in Discord for far too long. And in it. I really wanted to get involved, but it just seemed like some of the PK are just like, we the experts, we the PhDs with the peer reviewed, and it's almost like they some of them are trying to get us to lean a certain way because they're louder with their argument, or quote unquote more articulate with their argument. But I'm saying if the experts are still up in arms about it, some of their favorites still talking about they don't know, I don't have any idea, then there's no consensus either way. So we can still have this conversation, and a lot of this conversation is rooted very well in philosophy. I don't care what they say. Yes, some of the aspects can be talked about in science, but a lot of this conversation when it comes to determinism and free will and whatnot is rooted in philosophy.
Well, she has made her stance, y'all, and she's standing strong. I can't say I disagree, but I can't say I agree. But
I guess we know who the loud one is.
That's the point, sis.
I guess we know who the loud one is who think they got the PhD in this conversation.
Stand down, Cedric. We're not finished yet.
There you go.
Hey, everybody.
There you go. That's the first shot. There you go. There you go. They saw the cough. That's a cough. That's a cough.
Me and Cedric good. We can rumble.
Let me finish.
Yeah, we gonna rumble.
Let me finish. Let me get to the panel now. Let's be fair. Also, Pseudo Killer Official, we call him Kick Door Kent Clark in the building. What's up, Kent? Tell me what you got going on and where you stand on this conversation. Free will to be or not to be. Holla at your girl.
What up, man? Yeah, so y'all know my stance from the get-go. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that I know everything, never claim to be an expert on none of it. So I don't know what they talking about on that. But if you go with just basic physics, and biology. I know. Look, well, it's only been like 3 or 4 of us have been on the other side of it. You know what I'm saying? So if we go off of nature, man, it's not hard for me to accept no free will. You know what I mean? It's other people that still want to hold on to the emotion of, oh, well, if that ain't it, then this means that, and no slavery. You know, you can't hold people to account. I don't care about none of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's emotions at that point. I accept reality for what it is. Whatever the universe and nature throws at us, we just have to accept it for what it is and learn from it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm with the no free will, man. I've given them a definition.
You in that definition? Go. Yeah, he has given us the definition. I think he fell back, but he'll be back in a minute. I'm gonna give it 10, 9, maybe 8.
That's funny. That's
7.
funny. We're not gonna allow that definition.
We're trying to keep that hot seat. Pass the mic. Who's next?
Yo, so I saved actually the best for last. My bad. I saved actually. Are you back, Kent?
He's not back.
Okay, so I saved actually the best for last. I wanted to get in the pseudo killers, but I purposely saved logic for last because he is going to be involved in a debate with Marcus Chilembwe coming up sooner than later. Let's get it together, promoters.
What'd you say? Yahweh. What'd you say?
I'm finna put you in the back.
Yeah, it's trying to mirror our clubhouse. I mean, not our clubhouse. Marcus,
just let me know how to pronounce the name, man. I'm sorry, I'll be butchering. I'll be wanting to get it right though, because God Killer gonna troll me. But
no, he ain't gonna troll you, sis. I'm sorry. No, he ain't gonna troll you by saying somebody's name. No.
God Killer be trolling, girl. You already know.
I see the Black Widow is in excellent peak form today.
But hey, listen, wait. Now, everybody in the back, when it comes to Miss Tiffany, so y'all just gonna relax.
Cut out on.
Oh man, I forgot.
Don't worry about it. We heard the definition.
Wait a minute. Let him go. Yeah, he's about to get on the definition. Go ahead.
No, we heard it. No, he read it. We heard it. We good. We heard it.
But the one thing we didn't do while we was in the Discord, and this is why I had the guys, y'all got to start organizing this stuff better because it's things get lost in conversation. And I asked for each one of them to put their position. And I think it's important to for us to know exactly what their positions are. And I have them, I could read them, or they can read their own position. I posted it in the Discord so that we can be clear on what they're actually conversating about. So that people, so that if people are saying that ain't the conversation this is, well, you need to know what the debaters themselves, what their positions are.
Correct. And that's important when we're having these discussions. People are clearly defining their position and they're clearly defining their terms, right? And that's the most important part of any conversation or discussion. Did you want to give the definition? They trying to shut you up, Kent, but I'm gonna let you
the floor for 20 seconds.
This is
hey, look,
you get 20 seconds. This is what Kent think the conversation is about. Go ahead, Kent.
No, this is what when the conversation started. This is when the conversation started. This was what it was about, whether or not we have free will. Then I don't know, Logic went on some wild ride and started touring other ideas and shit. Then it ended up over there with compatibilism because we changed his mind on that. But
oh gosh.
Go ahead, Ken. We waiting.
You gonna do the definition, Ken, or no?
Tell us the definition for the umpteen time. Go ahead.
Can y'all hear me?
Let them live, Miss Tiffany.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
You're moving slow though.
Man, my bad. I was reading.
Pick up the pace. Nah, we don't hear you reading, sir.
We sure don't.
Hey, read that for me, Juma. I'm in a bad area.
Oh man, what you want me to read?
It's in the Discord.
If I get to it, whoever gets to it first, I get it.
Yeah, I'm mad. That shit cutting in and out. So I can't. I tell y'all.
I read it. I read it. Basically.
Don't do that.
No.
Read it. Oh.
Now let's get some clear, Ms. Tiffany.
So this is what Kent is he's standing on. He said this is what the conversation was about, and what are y'all talking about right now? Free will in philosophy and science, the supposed power or capacity of humans to make decisions or perform actions independently of any prior event or state of the universe. That's it. Full stop.
Thank you. We'll let that stand there. Logic. I'm gonna let you have the floor for a little bit because hopefully Marcus can join the panel soon. Please, Marcus. If not, we'll just do a little something here and then maybe move it to Clubhouse later.
And Logic said we don't have free will based on that. So yeah.
And Logic, read your premise. State your premise.
Can I finish?
I got it. As soon as I get the floor, I'm gonna clear it up.
Can y'all not hear me? Can I please have control? Thank you. I'm driving. Thank you very much. Well, hopefully we can get you all
YouTube, not the plan.
So hopefully we can get you all, we can rally you all to join us at Clubhouse also for this conversation, and probably where we'll have the bulk of the conversation. I just wanted to introduce it to YouTube also, because our goal is also to redirect some of these conversations. Like we really need to be having some high level scientific and serious conversations, not just the same old all the time. And that was the point of reasoning for doing this. But Logic, you have the floor right now to give us.
I appreciate y'all having the conversation. We're gonna be able to try to get it in and hold to what the actual definitions are talking about, right? Even though, or matter of fact, we're gonna go and let actual science attempt to weigh in on the conversation. But because I have to start here, right? I've been posting in the Discord for over a week now that I absolutely realize that we are engaging in what the field and what philosophy calls ivory tower of skepticism, which means that they are taking concepts that are impractical, that aren't useful in society, and kicking them around. We're also engaging in what the field would call intellectual navel gazing, which means we are involved in a self-indulging conversation that basically leads nowhere. So I am fully aware of what we're talking about, which is why I try to involve my conversation in science, right? And see where cognitive science, see where physics, see where biology actually can weigh in on the conversation, and not allowing people like Kent, my good friend, by the way, to bog me down into into a philosophical conversation that I already know leads nowhere. Number one, right? Number two, I'm gonna go ahead and read my premise off the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy at the very top of the screen. I put it in the back chat if you like to share it with everybody. The very top of the article reads: Compatibilism offers a solution to the free will problem, which concerns a disputed incompatibility between free will and determinism. Compatibilism is the thesis that free will is compatible with determinism. I got to repeat that. Compatibilism is the thesis that free will is compatible with determinism, right? It doesn't say determinism isn't true, right? Because free will is taken typically to be necessary for the condition of moral responsibility. That's what the definition says. So when I start moving the conversation back into moral responsibility, it's because that's what compatibilism is trying to address. That's the whole reason why they created this stance, to be able to say that I have to be able to hold people accountable for their actions, because determinism is on the far extreme side that says everything is predetermined, and since you're not in control of your actions, how could I hold you morally responsible?
And
That's
can you state your premise though that you gave us this morning in the Discord?
let me get back to it. I think it's really just as simple as
I have it. I have it, so I can read it. I think that's important. Come on, Logic. We just doing Discord right on YouTube. Come on, y'all.
Logic shook. He shook.
Let me do it. So Logic's premises and his position is human beings have enough freedom inside of determinism to be held responsible for our actions. Is that what you're standing on, Logic?
Coaching him. Look at you.
I think his audio kind of went out.
Oh, his audio went out. Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
The ancestors came and got him.
Because I saw his icon sort of moving, but I didn't hear anything. So maybe his audio is glitching.
And Marcus has said Marcus's premises, free will never existed. It was an assumption that on the surface seems to be objective, when in reality is ultimately subjective conjecture. So that's their premises.
Right. Yeah, free will is the claim. So the burden of proof is on the person claiming that we have free will to prove that, to show us where that's at.
Exactly. So the argument from compatibilism is just that, an argument. So it's creating a reason why free will doesn't exist. However, there is no demonstration of compatibilism, because compatibilism relies on dualism. And again, these are concepts that when we actually put them to the test, that's why you have a philosophical premise, which is your hypothesis, something you believe, right? You give an explanation for this phenomena that you're experiencing. However, it remains that an hypothesis, a thesis. It is not grounded by scientific data. And when we look at this, and this is what was confusing. Logic is talking about interjecting science, but he goes right to a philosophical discussion and not using a scientific one. So this is where the conversation becomes convoluted. Number two, when we are exploring mechanisms of how things work, right, we are not so much concerned with the results. And that's why the argument for compatibilism is one that moves the goalpost. And that was the intent of compatibilism within itself, because they could not find a premise to ground a free will. So they just, oh, well, it's compatible. However, there is no mechanism to engage compatibilism, because you're going to go right back to dualism. Compatibilism says dualism can exist within the concept of determinism. And factually, it cannot, because the premise of dualism, we do not have any way to substantiate it. Mind and body are separate, when we know that the mind is an emergent property of the brain. It's something we call mind, but it's just brain activity.
Can I ask something just as a clarification piece, because we probably have people in the audience and on the panel that aren't necessarily philosophy buffs, right? So there's
Right.
there's a lot of these categories and these nice intricate boxes that are sort of thrown around. So can we get a working definition for determinism? Because I think that's where the seat of this argument really lies, right?
Thank you.
So who on the panel can actually provide a
I did
working
that
definition
earlier.
for that?
So
I did.
to answer that one, I've already placed the definition by logic of determinism and compatibilism in the chat for people to look at. For
Right, but can we just, you know, from a just as a high level, let's talk it through.
Well,
right? Can we do it?
Yeah, in the Discord, we brought up both the brought up two things. We brought up will, I think, and determinism or mind. Okay, so determinism, they can have multiple meanings. So my position is that determinism also has philosophical leanings to it. It's not just will or free will. So determinism falls under several categories. Belief. A determinist is someone who believes that they are powerless to change their destiny. Synonyms of determinist include fatalist, predestinarian, and predeterminist. Theory. Determinism is a theory that everything that happens must happen as it does and could not have happened any other way. It implies that all of reality is already, in a sense, predetermined or pre-existent, and therefore nothing can come, nothing new can come into existence. View. Determinism is the view that free will is an illusion and that our behavior is governed by internal or external forces over which we have no control. It views our behavior as predictable and has particular implications for morality, science, and religion. So
can I read the scientific definition of determinism?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not far off, but scientific determinism means that current events are the result of science, meaning the biological and environmental realities are causal. There are no random causes or free will.
I want to add something really quick to the conversation. And it's something that I don't see us addressing much concerning this conversation, but I think it's an underpinning to it. It's something that we actually discuss when we discuss the brain and when we discuss complexity. Okay, so complexity is this broader thing. Okay, it's just not something associated with the brain. It's actually something that deals with a mechanism, a tool to deal with subjects or issues that have a very complex nature. We also discuss how science is moving. How it is moving is usually in a linear manner. How it needs to move in some conversations is more in a non-linear manner. And I am in tune to believe that we are at a position in time and space where science is looking to move in both so it can address subjects and issues that have a very complex nature to them. So that means that science will have to grow, evolve to move in a non-linear manner to actually address this type of subject matter that is a complex issue. Does anyone want to expound on that, or do anyone on the panel really understand what I'm saying? Because I think that's something we haven't actually discussed.
I think I want to address that. That means that there are multiple, to come to certain conclusion, as science always does, it uses different methodologies and approach particular subjects from different scientific models, right? And holistically, all these sciences together can give us a better picture instead of approaching these things from one particular scientific point of view.
Correct.
However, when we're dealing with science, I'm going to continue to say this, it's grounded philosophically and methodologically in naturalism. All complexities that exist are going to remain within the realm of naturalism, right? And therefore, it's going to be rooted ultimately in causality, because nature functions based on causal reality. We cannot get around that. And if we fundamentally understand these principles, then then, and as we continue the conversation, we have to keep them in mind so that we do not go off into these philosophical realms and use them to underpin reality where there is no substantiation for them. This is the root problem of having structured our society based on a philosophical concept of free will. And now we're using philosophical arguments to substantiate something that science is telling us clearly
Right.
that isn't a fact.
Bam, 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 bam,
But,
bam. You nailed
science
it,
isn't in a
Queen.
consensus in this conversation,
yeah,
though.
hold up, Miss Tim. You gotta let me address that right there.
Go
See,
ahead.
that's where
Let the
I
games
feel like
begin.
so
Go
much
ahead, Mike.
contention is, or at least that's where I'm getting where people are turning into the expert, right? Because we actually don't have a consensus on human beings' decisions, which I just clarified what the conversation is about, is predetermined or deterministic. That they're not saying that, right? That's not what science is actually saying. And
What is,
a person's
wait a minute, slow it
ability to
down.
make decisions, a person's ability to make decisions, why would that be outside of laws of nature? Why wouldn't that be natural, like a part of the
This is
natural
where
laws?
this is where true comprehension of science comes into play. Science says we do not yet know exactly how this process is fully complete. That's why the multidisciplinary approach to understanding it. However, when we're having these discussions, I do not need to be an expert in this particular subject to understand the philosophical underpinnings of under which this conversation is happening. Again, whatever process is taking place by which means we make decisions, it is rooted in causality. And there are multiple factors that play into how and why a particular decision is made. That is rooted in naturalism. The illusion of free will exists because of that, because of how our brain processes the information. However, that process in itself is firmly rooted in causality. So the concept of free will that is without cause, decision making without cause, action without cause is fundamentally not valid. It is not
Oh,
real. It is not
okay,
substantiated by science.
and that's fine. I don't disagree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. Right. The part of what you said that I would disagree was the middle section right there, right? Where you said, what exactly did you say? You said, dang, I kind of lost my train of thought right there, Sid. But
Yeah, it
from
went
what
too
I'm,
long. You gotta
So
stop from going
if you
long.
agree with
yeah,
that, then
yeah.
you basically saying we have no
Nah,
free
nah,
No,
you
no,
will.
no.
gotta let him come on,
I
Ken. You gotta
agree.
let him
I
get
agree
it. You
with
gotta
the
let him get it.
cause, right? I agree with the cause, and I definitely agree what they don't fully understand. But what I don't understand about what he's saying is that how whatever the process is that they do it would be outside of nature. That I don't understand. Because when science talks about
The
it, when
idea,
cognitive science talks about it, they call these actions voluntary. Not me. I'm not saying that.
the idea that of compatibilism rests and is rooted in dualism, that mind body are separate from each other, so that
No,
there is
that's
that.
incorrect. That's libertarian free will you're
So
talking about.
he's saying show him how you came to that conclusion, Cedric, so that you know what I mean he can understand what you're saying on that. That is
It is
rooted in
it is
dualism.
it's rooted in the fundamentals of nature. Nature is causal. All actions within nature is causal. That we do not understand a particular mechanism doesn't make it not causal. And
Okay.
as long as it is causal, it is not free of natural forces.
All right.
So
I got
let me attempt to extend the olive branch a little bit, right?
you.
Let me clearly define the three positions within the conversation. Libertarian free will are people that says that you have this mysterious ability to block out all the external factors and just make a free choice. I'm not saying that. Right? Those are the people that are more. Now there are some compatibilists that use dualism, but the compatibilist argument, I mean the dualist argument is definitely more so in libertarianism with the mystery, right? I, on the other hand, compatibilism agrees that determinism agrees with nature is there's a cause to every action. I agree there, but I'm saying like the simple version is these alternative possibilities are in compatibilism, not determinism. You say you're a
What?
hard determinist, right? Which says that there are no possibilities. There's only one outcome that can happen. So those are basically the three versions, and I don't fit dualism. That's not my position. I haven't mentioned the mind one time out this whole months, like these whole couple months we've been talking about it. You've never heard me mention dualism, spirit, mystery, ability. No, I haven't. That's not
You
what I
you
mentioned.
Just
you interjected
May I
compatibilism there
stop?
without giving a
Hold on,
mechanism.
Cedric. Can I hold on, Cedric? Please. Sorry. I'm sorry. I want to pause the game for a minute because welcome to the panel, Pseudo Killer Official. We have Marcus Chilambwe. I'd be murdering it, but he'll correct me. But I want to give you this time right now, Marcus, to like introduce yourself or introduce your position on the conversation of free will to be or not to be.
Shalom.
BB
All
for
right. Peace to the panel. Peace to the pseudo killers and to the chat and everybody in there. I want to clarify some things. I am not in regards to this conversation saying you have to agree with my stance. I want to make that clear. That is not my point. If you ask me why I am a hard determinist, I will tell you why. And if you don't agree with why I am, that's your choice and thing. But I am a naturalist. That's what I am. So I believe that there are always clear implications for being a naturalist. And certain things that we made assumptions about prior to the development of the science and technology we have today needs to be redressed and addressed. If I was to give an example, I'll give you a semi-personal example on what I'm talking about and why it matters. A 17-year-old kid who was in a foster home for about 7 years, abused, went to live with his mother, who new boyfriend was also abusive. In a turmoil fight, they got into an argument. The older man, the mother's boyfriend, struck the kid. He's crying. He's upset. He leaves the house after she put him out again. And in the rush of him moving, he caused an accident and 2 people lost their life. We would quickly say that guy is at fault. But we know by neurology standards, his brain hasn't even developed enough to make conscientious, correct decisions. What do we do about these situations? What about the man who first tried to sue McDonald's for putting extra fat and additives into the food? And he went on Good Morning America and said, yes, I had a choice, but the cravings were too strong and the American population went against him. They had to go get children who we assumed didn't have the same free will of choice to get McDonald's to stop manipulating their food so that they can get the outcomes they want on people that we say got free will. What about the Kuwaitan government who wanted America to join in Desert Storm, who sent in a lady who was with the diplomats? They hired an actual they hired a PR firm to create a story. The lady went and testified before Congress, and I can't count how many soldiers were killed during Desert Storm. We had this idea that people are making decisions outside of external, internal factors, and I'm saying that just doesn't exist based on what we currently know about science. Now, are there compatibilists who say, yes, but there's a little bit of free will? I'm sure there is. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you exactly what they say. This is from Logic Source earlier today. Juju, share my screen right quick, please.
Oh man, you about to kill him already?
Be quiet, Kent. We just shooting a breeze.
Hey, hold on. Yeah, we trying to get ready for this debate too. So y'all ain't shooting all y'all guns.
Yeah,
We just introducing the conversation.
Not giving presentations.
I'm not going to use
Go ahead and share your screen, but while
I
you
want to make sure we understand.
Right.
Exactly
Go ahead and share
where
your
the
screen.
conversation is.
But while you're doing that, I want to introduce also to the stage Sister Safa. Peace, pseudo killer, Army official, lady killer in the building.
Peace. I'm glad to be here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. I wanted to know if you want to give your position real quick on the conversation, and then we'll let Marcus continue. But I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself and whatnot.
Well, my name is Safa, and I'm a psych nurse, so I'm very much interested in this psychological conversation and neurological conversation, I like to call it. I got a few issues with certain things, like the will, for example, and I'm a compatibilist, so that's that's the aspect I'm coming from. Compatibilism.
Compatibilist, correct. I'm no free will, by the way, if anybody's wondering, because I'm on that like kind of physics line, like it's cause and effect to everything. So yeah, if anybody's wondering, yeah, that's where I stand. But let's get to
vaccinated. I'm vaccinated.
Okay, so let me
that human beings have will. Human beings have will, and we have the opportunity to make choices and decisions.
We got will, it just ain't free, Miss Tiffany. That's all.
Okay,
so
Miss Tiffany is a no free will as well, because she refuses to use free will.
Which is free will for a reason.
But we on the same side, because you saying there ain't no free will at that point.
We're not on the same side. Say that.
No, because you're refusing.
That's what I wanted to say. I would say that.
But you're refusing to use free for a reason.
And I also let them get us back to Marcus, but I also think that there are absolutely deterministic things. So I guess I'm a compatibilist. I'm clear that previous events can have an impact on a current thing. But if I got 5 choices in front of me, just like logic has stated, that limbic whatever experiment ain't revealing which one of them 5 options I'm gonna choose.
That's what I'm
so
saying.
I feel like in that moment I have a decision that I can make.
And that's why I'm joking saying that we have will, it just ain't free because we pay for them by the choices that we make.
But based on that definition of
black out of there, it changes, don't it, yo?
Hey, but look.
Yo, let Marcus go. Let Marcus go.
Hold on. I want to know where everybody's standing based on that definition, though.
Hold on, Kent. I want to make sure
let him go. Let him ride.
I want to make sure we clear. I'm going to address will. I'm actually going to address that during the conversation. And when you find out what science has come to know about it already, you might be a little surprised. But I will address it. I know that's a concern that we have, right? But they've already done plenty of studies, and they got some compelling evidence towards what that means. What exactly is that? But we got to understand that I'm not saying that people can't learn. But let me read this. This is from Logic's earlier source. In contrast, talking about hard determinism, so-called soft determinism is also called compatibilists, believe that determinism and free will are compatible after all. In most cases, soft determinists attempt to achieve this reconciliation by subtly revising or weakening the common sense notion of free will. Contemporary soft determinists include English philosopher G.E. Moore, who held that acting freely means only that one would have to act otherwise had one decided to do so, even if, in fact, one could not have decided to do so. That's a key point. Even if, in fact, one could not have decided to do so. The American philosopher Harry Frankfurt, you can watch his videos on YouTube, very interesting conversation, who argued that acting freely amounts to identifying with or proving one's own desires, even if those desires are such that one cannot help but act on them. Again, we back to the same point, changing, slightly shifting what free will means. But if you listen from the Discord, I told y'all it had to do with desires, intentions, the probability of a soul. All these things are mixed in, even though we try to live in a scientific thing, right?
I
I'm
appreciate
not
you helping me
saying
out
one or
with
the
this,
other.
bro.
Here's another one from Logic. Although the central issues involved is the problem of free will and moral responsibility have remained the same since ancient times, the emphasis of the debate has changed greatly. Contemporary compatibilists in vein of Frankfurt and Strawson, you'll see Logical use Strawson, I'll be responding to him too, tend to argue that moral responsibility has little, if anything, to do with determinism, since it arises from people's desires and attitudes rather than the causal origins of their actions. Humans may not be free to as great an extent as the initiative notion of free will suggests, but there is no other freedom to be had. Addressing the problem of free will, moral responsibility requires establishing guidelines and holding people accountable, not lunging after soon impossible notions of free will. So what does that all mean? I'm simply saying, very simply, what I'm saying is the notion of free will has been a conversation from ancient times, and they're mixing and trying to find a way to update the conversation to match the current science. They're trying to adjust the definition and the meanings in the common sense, how we use it today.
That makes perfect sense. So what's your point on that? I'm sorry.
My point is free will doesn't exist. It never did. The conversation isn't now in a sense.
Oh my goodness.
Wait. So why were you trying to do all that work?
One at a time. Let Marcus
go ahead,
finish.
Mr. Go ahead.
Yeah, saying, but that's what human beings do. Just because something was, we've seen other different words, their meaning morph over time, or their concept of certain ideas morph over time. Why does this idea of free will or will have to be immune to that? That's just like, of course, people are going to, our views on certain concepts are going to change over time. I think it always happens with human beings.
I want to add to that, Can I add to that real quick, Marcus? Because I think also with science is correcting, right? It also corrects presuppositions or positions we have had in the past. It makes corrections. So this is how science is making the correction, though. So.
But it's also a philosophical. But the thing is, it's also obviously very philosophical and subjective.
And we can talk about the philosophy. We can also talk about how a lot of things started as a philosophical position and became scientific. Like there is some evolution in that.
Okay, but earlier we were talking about the soul and the will being cold. I'm gonna stop after this. The soul and the will, because of what Aristotle and Socrates and all them said.
Right, exactly. That would mean
years ago. And my point is, whether there's a soul or not, no matter what side of the fence you fit on that. My point is that that human beings still have a will, whether it resides in the soul or somewhere else, according to how you show up in the world.
Right. But they also thought we had a reptilian brain, and we know with science that that's not the case. So just maybe with science, it's just not the case. They were wrong.
Miss Juju making my point now. Because if that's the case,
they haven't ruled that out.
Yeah, if that's the case, what was the point in establishing what Aristotle meant anyway? Like what did that actually even do for your argument, establishing what Aristotle meant by agency or free or will? When we now have a more modern concept that we adhere to.
Because I'm saying because of science, we know that there's causality to much of everything. I don't see an example where there isn't. So that's why I'm kind of lying on like the physics knows every, cause has an equal and whatever reaction. Like that's where I'm at with it. And even in life itself. So it's just that it gets
I think one of the problems is that there, if I'm not mistaken, there's no consensus for determinism, no scientific consensus, and there's no scientific consensus also against free will.
Yep.
And what I've been looking at. So that's
and it's really not as cut and dry as that. Like
Right.
that, we don't understand why there's something rather than nothing. I mean, we don't understand how unconscious things give rise to conscious things, right? Like we there's a lot that we don't understand the cause of. Like that, like that's such a blanket statement, right? I mean, to assume that because that's true, other things have to now be true isn't. I don't think that's the best way to be looking at it, personally.
But that's ultimately your argument. You're saying we got feelings and we have this action that has to be because of free will. And I'm saying they never established free will as being true, ever. It's assumption that's been made that has ingrained itself inside of society. And I'm going to address it. And it's not the only thing, nor is it the last thing that has happened. And I'm saying
Actually,
that the assumptions is that free will exists, and as a result of free will, we can do this, and this. And I'm saying you have no proof for that. You may
I'm
be able
not.
to
I'm
do
not
this,
claiming to have
this.
proof.
Hold on. You may be able to do this, and this, but there's no established science that says it's because of free will. It's
Right,
none.
and that's because they refuse to use the language of free will because of all the sliding definitions and having to address what do you mean by free, what do you mean by will, what do you mean by free will, and how much do we have? They don't even attempt to get caught up in it. That's why. That's why I want to talk about sleepwalking. That's why
No,
I want to talk about the Benjamin Libet experiment.
but
That's why I want to talk about cognitive science and biology
but
and
that
and get out of the sliding definitions.
But the sliding definition is the compatibilist argument. I just read that. The hard determinist isn't sliding the definition. Your position is changing the definition so it can fit what we know about science. Hard determinist says, nah, we don't give a heck what they say. We see what it is. This is where we at right now. Compatibilists say, well, hey, listen, that may not exist, but what about this version of free will? What about
But you
this
but
version?
but you see what you said right there, right? You
But
see
that's
where
not
you said that you're gonna be able to prove determinism, right?
no,
And
no.
and then you see what I said when I'm talking about what cognitive science says, what biology says. Right? I hold a position of compatibilism. You hold a position of determinism, and I'm gonna go over what the experiments outside of both of these conversations are talking about.
Right. And so what I'm saying is the interpretation of data is based on your philosophical position. We're just human beings. And so if you say I'm trying to get away from a sliding definition, the people who creating the sliding definition are the compatibilists. Can we read it again? It's from your own source. It specifically tells you the way they're trying to make it compatible with the free will and determinants compatible is by shifting subtly the definition. That is what they're doing. So I'm saying if that is what they're doing, right, I don't accept that in my current understanding and my current position. I stand with the other scientists who stand with the hard determinants. And listen, if you want to be a compatibilist, be a compatibilist, but just know it's a sliding slope.
Can I
Right.
Well,
say
So,
hold on,
something?
hold
Can I
on,
say
hold
something?
on, hold on, because I think that was a strong claim saying that science stands on the philosophical side of determinism now, right?
Yeah, and that's
If
that's
you
wrong.
make that
Thank you,
claim,
Brendan.
you're gonna have to show something to support that claim, and we can do that at the debate. But that is a strong claim, brother.
And
Right?
can I
So
say
pencil it,
something?
put a pin in that right there.
No,
Right?
Now, with
because
the
what I
definition,
said was compatibilists do. So compatibilists don't argue determinists.
No.
They
Hold on,
don't argue
hold
that.
on. I want to be clear. You said that you stand on the side of determinism, where the side of science stands.
No,
that's
what I'm
what you
Right?
saying
said.
is
Are you saying that science leans more towards the deterministic side of
no.
the
What I'm saying,
philosophical perspective, or what?
I'm saying that in this conversation with logic, compatibilists and hard determinists do not argue determinism. That is not where we're at. Compatibilists do not argue against determinism. So me and logic both are determinists. That's where the conversation is. Now, are there science that argues indeterminists? Absolutely, but that isn't what the compatibilisms argue.
Okay, that's a good clarity, Pete. A good point of clarity, because I was under the impression that we were We were swinging science towards one side or the other, right? So, but if we're gonna do that, we're gonna have to show some evidence for it. But since we're not, we're gonna table that. Okay, cool.
No, that's what he said. It's cool. It's cool. You let him wiggle out of it, but that's what he said.
No, no,
You wiggled out of it. I say he wiggled out of it.
Hey, Sister Sci-Fi, I'm gonna go after you. Go ahead. I want to hear your voice. Go ahead. I'm gonna go after you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say if we can get back to this definition that we've been referring to, and it talks about revising or weakening the common sense notion of free will. So the first problem that I have with that is the word common sense. So we know that, in science, there's no common sense.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to refer to is the video that we saw earlier that one of the brothers posted in the Discord. And it said that free will can refer to the capacity to make intelligent decisions. So we can say that free will means that can be a definition for us, according to what we saw earlier in the video. Just the capacity to make intelligent decisions.
I
What do
like
you guys
that.
think about that?
I like that. I like that.
That's one of those sliding definitions. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's a sliding definition. It muddies the water because determinism really is about causality. That's what determinism is. It's about causality.
Let me go after Unc. I'm going after Unc.
All right, so for me to understand the conversation, it's a very interesting conversation, and I have some experiences, right, and which is anecdotal, right, but I also understand evolution. So in understanding evolution, things like morality, people actually think that you can only have morality based off of some type of spiritual entity or based off some type of religion, when in actuality, there's certain chemicals that humans have that actually promote morality. So Homo sapiens sapiens, they had to adhere to certain things for the group to stay together. So I think that's kind of important. But somebody got to mute out. You got to mute out. You got to mute out. You got to mute out. So human beings evolved, okay, to be able to be compatible with each other. So morality is actually based off certain chemical makeup. Same way with having babies. Homo sapiens sapiens, there's certain chemicals that make you attract to your baby. You don't just throw your baby away. So for me, I think that maybe will or free will or whatever, or even a choice. I think it might be a based off of evolution. We evolved to have choices, and I think they have not figured out like which chemicals or genes are responsible for that yet. But I think it has something to do with evolution, and I also think that we're under the illusion that we actually have a type of choice, right? But I think that illusion is important for the well-being of Homo sapiens sapiens. Like you gotta feel like you're in charge of something. I think it has something to do with that. I don't have anything to necessarily back it up, but I can back up the fact that most people think morality got something to do with how a person is acting, when it's actually the chemical makeup of Homo sapiens sapiens that promotes this particular morality code. So I understand the conversation through evolution. That's my point.
That I like what you said. I wouldn't go as far as to call it an illusion, but I got something I'm gonna present on that, right? But I think that we're right there at the point. You know what? I gotta let this go on a little bit longer, right? But absolutely, just to clarify, the conversation is definitely about decision making, which you absolutely can draw parallels to evolution and still be within naturalistic causality and all these other things. It's not working outside of that. That's just the bottom line to everything that I'm saying. There's nothing mysterious going on. We actually do have this ability to weigh our options, visualize an abstract future, which includes the consequences of our actions and make a decision. And that's important that you got to realize that too.
So logic, it is certain people who will take more risks. High risk behaviors has something to do with evolution too. So there's people who will just jump out of planes, and some people are like, no, I'm not gonna do that. There's some people that are more wired for like war. When I say wired, like there's certain chemicals going on, and certain people like going to war all the time. So with evolution, those who didn't fight as much live longer to you know what I mean, to actually to transmit their genes that will produce valuable offspring that will continue those particular genes, just like the mechanism in crying. That has something to do with evolution too. So those that cry more live longer to reach the age of reproduction, to pass their genes on. If I was to show you a crying baby, we would all pay attention to it, right? That's evolution. So I'm thinking they may have not found exactly, because like I said, there's actually no consensus on it and it's still working. That's why I'm not actually choosing any side at this point. But I'm actually saying I'm pretty sure there's going to be an evolutionary reason behind why we either have choices or don't.
No, I totally agree, right? So that's why I'm trying to take the conversation outside of this philosophical muck and mire that's so difficult to navigate because of all the overlap in the definitions, right? And get into what the cognitive scientists are saying. And they used words like volition. They call these acts voluntary based on XYZ. And that's really just the simple way to put it, right? I don't have to be bogged down by a definition that says I'm free or not free. The science is the one that's saying that your actions are voluntary or involuntary. I'm gonna let them distinguish what a voluntary involuntary action is, not my philosophical armchair definition. And that's going to be where I'm gonna hang my hat at, for the information. But I kind of I want to see if Marcus is really ready, because I know that you're familiar with Strawson's argument, right? And I want you to talk a little bit about what Strawson is saying that we have to give up, right, in order to be in a 100% deterministic world.
I thought you just said that we were staying away from philosophy.
I am. You said you could prove determinism.
I did not say that. I just said that you already agreed to determinism. Stop
Okay,
trying to
so
switch the
that
joint up.
you trying to slip out of that?
No. Are you a compatibilist?
Yeah.
Do compatibilists believe in determinism?
Yeah.
In the discussion. So now you want me to go to philosophy. I thought we were staying away from philosophy.
I mean, it's up to you. I can handle the conversation on either.
I'm just asking you
sure.
where you want to be at. Because I mean, you just said.
I mean, I just asked you about Strawson.
Hold on, but you just said I'm trying to stick with the science of it. That's what I'm doing. Then you asked me a question about philosophy. Strawson was a thought experiment. It was a philosophical conversation.
Okay, let's have a conversation.
So are we going to have a philosophical conversation, or are we going to deal with the science? Where you
come on, man? The name of the debate is we talking about free will. So there's going to be some philosophy in there.
Right.
Before we move forward, and I really think we should deal with the science, right? That's yeah.
I don't think
Now the science is going to be too much to give away.
Just pause for a minute. Thank you. Before we move forward, though, we do have someone who hit the panel, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to speak or add to the conversation. Live Mayat.
This is the audience member.
He's on the panel. I'm not sure. Hello, Live Mayat.
All right, he didn't come from the Discord. That's what I'm meaning. I didn't know.
No, ma'am. I dropped the link in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Live Mayat.
Oh, somebody on it.
They not talking. They busy. Look like.
Yeah, he's doing something.
He in the
He
mall.
needs to turn his camera off.
Yeah, turn the camera in the mall. He didn't set his camera up at the mall. Look. Hell's going on. Did he have a choice to do that or what?
Live Mayat.
Is that a rational decision or not? I don't know. It depends on what he's selling.
All right.
Next caller. Right.
That's just funny, yo. That's wow.
That's funny.
All right. You gonna go?
Go ahead, Godzilla.
Yeah, okay.
Rastaman, hit that link.
I wonder if is the choice, and maybe so maybe we don't like for morality, right? We know that there's chemicals. I talked about that in the debate in religion, right? About the chemicals do that. And there's certain genes and all that type of thing that make us more social than, say, Neanderthal. Okay, the way it was wired was different. The developmental gene, regulatory developmental genes. These are all part of the processes of evolution and natural selection, right? So I wonder if if you follow some humans that got high risk behavior, right? Maybe they don't actually have a choice in their high risk behavior based off their genes, but the humans that choose to follow them, y'all kind of catching what I'm saying? Like maybe we have a choice to whether to follow these people with these types of high risk behaviors or not. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe that's the piece right there. Maybe you don't have, maybe we have a choice to follow people who claim to have a high morality. That we kind of like the priests. We think priests have high morality. That's why we follow priests. So we choose whether we follow these priests or not. And maybe at the core of what I'm saying is that there's a chemical that produces morality, and some of us may have more than others, right? And so do we choose to follow these people? Because it seems like if you can finesse enough, and like the priest is like, it's like we think priests have high morality code, right? And we choose to follow that as opposed to say a person that we deem a criminal. So like the conversation is wild to me. It's deep and it's wild at the same time. I just couldn't imagine a world where you wouldn't be able to take personal accountability for things. And Marcus and then will give you an example of how there were times where schizophrenia they would actually burn you at the stake for. But now we understand that that's a mental problem, right?
And science fix that.
And science, yes. Okay, so watch this. So what about like they talk about having watch this, epilepsy, seizures, right? And so if you're having a seizure and you drive a car, you kill somebody, right?
Right.
They wouldn't exactly, you wouldn't exactly punish a person for that. And in states, they have laws that say if you're having these seizures, there has to be a certain amount of time before you can regain. You have to have a certain period where you're not having these seizures anymore,
Correct.
where you can regain your license. But let me ask you this. Suppose you break that. Well, I'm just going to drive anyway.
You made a choice.
But wait a minute. But if you say we're not having choices, see, this is my dilemma. Then how could it be?
Though
determinism?
That's what we are.
Yeah, I just want to put that there. That's what we're arguing about. That's why I just wanted to say that like that. It's very interesting to me. That's all. And even though I understand evolution, that's why I think it's actually an illusion that we're actually having a choice. You know, like that. Maybe that's my way to explain myself about the shit. But
that word illusion kind of makes what you're saying tricky. But like, can somebody? Matter of fact, I can read.
Let me read what. First, go ahead. Back up something, God Killer, because you were making, and we got to get back on that choice thing. I still think we have that way confused.
Okay.
But so I'm gonna back it up a little bit because you were giving an example with the ministers or whatever, the priests, are having more morality. Because at one point I thought you were speaking on what do they say, predisposition, so to speak.
Okay.
So we know in science has now been able to show us that people can have a certain predisposition to some orders or disorders, right? In the way you were putting it, I don't want people to confuse what science has determined can be a predisposition versus what we might actually surmise or think somebody as having, but not actually being qualified by science. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
The preacher doesn't mean he actually has more morality. You get what I'm saying? Like, how can we qualify that? You get what
No, you're right. So I kind of mixed that up. You're right.
I just want to clear that up as far as like science can determine in some, areas a predisposition, like, now they can show maybe a predisposition to alcoholism or whatnot. And if you know this, then you can abide yourself in a manner throughout your life, this, that would deem you to have a better advantage over maybe not having an alcoholic problem. You get what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not so much that we don't have a choice. Like, we're giving a certain amount of variables or information, then we can make better decisions. And by making a decision, in some ways, that has to denote a choice. That's where I'm kind of getting.
So can I speak to that right quick?
Go ahead.
So when you're talking about in terms of disposition, which is a very good word because of the conversation, right? Let me slow it down or break it down in a way that's real
wait
easy
a minute,
to understand.
and to preface, remember that I'm making a distinction. I'm saying what science can qualify, because I want my goal is to have this conversation be one that's based on the science that we know of, and not so much other philosophy. And maybe because I'm more predisposed to the science than the philosophy, I'm not really big on this philosophical conversations, but I understand this conversation on the scientific end of it is what I'm saying. But I also want you to note that when I'm talking about predisposition, I'm talking about things that can be qualified through science as a predisposition. You know, you get what I'm
Right.
saying, Logic?
I
Okay.
absolutely get what you're saying.
All right.
I want to break it down so everybody can
All right.
understand it in an even more simple way, right? So like
All right.
there are dispositions that we are born with that we absolutely are not in control of, such as what ethnic group we belong to, such as the economic circumstances of our household, or what part of the world that we're born in, right? What culture we actually belong to. We don't control those factors. Those are like our just, we're just born here with that package, right? Now, determinism claims the thesis that
You're
all events in
frying
the
fish,
universe,
Bobby
including
Baker.
human decisions.
Hold on, yo. You gotta start over, yo. I'm in this motherfucker frying shrimp and grilling. I'm
I know
tripping.
you fry
Man,
fish.
save me some, dog.
Did I make it? Did I make a choice though? Is
Oh
what I want to
man,
know.
Oh my God.
No,
it
There
depends on
goes
what
that
kind of
word
fish.
philosophy.
nah,
We
Is it
ain't getting away
catfish?
from the
Is it
philosophy.
that ain't
catfish or
you. That ain't
tilapia? It
you.
Shrimp.
depends.
That's your
That's some
subconscious
whiting,
frying shrimp
Brendan.
right
That's
now.
I
whiting.
didn't make a choice to eat a salad because I'm eating a salad today and I'm grilling some shrimp. I decided against the fried food. Was that a choice? Like, what was it?
That
Or
was
was
Which
my ass
choice?
getting too
definitely a
big?
rational
Hold on.
choice. That's
Or,
definitely a rational
A
choice.
or was
rational
I getting
choice.
too goddamn big? And I said, yo, I got to hold up now. Let me get it together now for my health. You know what I
It
mean?
was not determined in
Yeah.
the Big Bang, Bobby Baker.
That's
So look,
hilarious, bro. I'm done with y'all.
So
Oh,
look, it's in the definition, right?
More to your
I'm
war.
reading right now out the Britannica. It says in philosophy and science, the thesis that all events in the universe, including human decisions and actions, are causally inevitable. Right? Determinism entails that in a situation in which a person makes a certain decision or performs a certain action, it is impossible that he or she could have made another decision or performed any other action. In other words, it is never true that people could have decided or acted otherwise than they actually did. Now that's the definition, right? Now many times I feel like I hear Marcus going away from that. He say something like that. Well, I'm not going to get into that. But
Mhm.
that's what the definition says. The definition says your actions are inevitable, and you actually anything that you actually did, you had no control over it whatsoever.
So I
That's what the
want to
definition
piggyback off
says.
that too. And that to me is the same argument that side has with free will being religious. That sounds very religious to me. And that's why you cannot get rid of the philosophical aspect of this conversation, no matter where we go with it. Because as we see, the Encyclopedia Britannica even incorporates philosophy in the definition.
I got a question about the definition. Is there considered to be a scientific definition versus a philosophical one, or is just all in the same? I'm just asking for clarification, maybe
Well,
for
the conversation is rooted in philosophy, so
I'm not talking about where it's
You can
rooted.
read the
I'm
scientific
talking
definition.
about where it's
I mean, I don't know. I
going.
haven't. Honestly,
Let
I've
me
never looked up the
finish. I think
scientific definition of
we get it
determinism.
convoluted because what was my words rooted in, but where is it going?
Well,
We
the
know that
conversation is rooted in free
let me
will.
finish. We
So,
know that this conversation is moving or is not already in the seat of science.
I got you.
Through neuroscience and through other things. So let's stop talking about where whatever, because okay, we get that, but it has evolved. That's where we're at right now. We at the cusp. All right.
I have a definition. I have a definition for you. Scientific determinism is the belief. Okay, there's that word, that whatever happens physically is determined by causes, and that it's predictable. I'm sorry. All right. Happens has physically determined causes. Okay. Has physically determined causes and is the predictable result of these causes. By stimulating the search for causes, determinism has proven itself extremely useful to both physical and social modern science. So,
right.
That definition sounds a little different, though. Just a little. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but it also has the word belief in it.
Okay. Well, I guess we
I'm
can't.
just saying, like everybody on this panel, even as we're talking about it, we have nuanced perspectives on it, right? There's this thing about choice and how choice plays in. Is choice the same as will and free will?
Mm-hmm.
And my thing is, like I said, if I got 5 options in front of me, you're not going to tell me that I'm gonna that whatever I decide to pick out of those 5 options, and I can choose a different thing every minute. That was determined by my great grandparents. Nobody's gonna tell me that. So I do believe that's where we have the opportunity to make those rational choices, as Brendan said, in that moment.
Right, and you know what? Newton, he was one of the first scientific determinists. Right, he actually, and it's rooted in the ideas of physics, where he talks about in the ideas within classical mechanics. Right, so you've got like the ideas, the laws of nature, the things, the implications of free will, and all that. So Isaac Newton, actually, he's the one that sort of pulled that into the conversation. But you think about it, right? There is a field called the philosophy of science, right? And all these philosophical, concepts that some of the early and even modern scientists are using are sort of wrapped up in the idea of the philosophy of science. So, yep.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a moment right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Juju.
Sorry. I want to allow a few people who've joined the panel to give their thoughts on the conversation. Going to try again with the Live for Mayat Mental. Are you there? And can you unmute? Can you speak, please? We
can't hear you. No, we can't hear him.
We can't hear you, dear.
Can't hear you.
We've determined that we cannot hear you based off our choice.
Stop it.
I really can't hear it.
Maybe you should go
Was
back.
it rational? I don't know.
Did he choose an iPhone or Android? What did you use?
We also have
that's Sunchild.
We also have Google Scholar.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Peace. What's good?
What's good?
Peace.
Welcome. Happy New Year.
Are the
Happy New Year to you
black?
too.
Are the Egyptians
No.
black?
No.
Wait. You trying to find out if
no.
Wait.
I
saw
kick you
your
off the
award
panel. No, for real. I kick you off the panel if you get into that conversation with Bobby. This is no
Black Egypt.
We're not doing
it. It was a joke, yo. I was just trying to see where your head was, yo.
We're not.
Wait, what was that? What was? all right.
Don't even. I want you to stay on task on the conversation we're having. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Do not pay attention.
On free will.
Whatever you want to say. You have 30 seconds. Give
on free will. Yes, on free will. Yes.
Okay, well, I like to start it off like this. 95% of the so-called conscious community is really the willingly ignorant, enabling, delusional, cowardly, front for scamming community that's high off selective moralism and selective outrage. Wow. I'd like to say that first.
What the hell? He got his gun out immediately. I like this guy. He came out with his gun out.
Let him finish.
Gun to a knife fight.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let him finish. Go ahead.
Yeah, I like to start off like that. Okay. And then if we keep it on topic,
please.
I think free will is real. And if anybody would like to prove me wrong, I'd be open, to hear that. But I think I want almost say I believe, but I make the choices that I make. I'm influenced by outside forces. I think a particular aspect of our lives, everyone's life, there is a choice, and I think we do have free will. But I would have to say I'm not sure. I've heard some pretty convincing conversations.
Okay.
And I'm open to entertain conversations like that. But if I use my own, from my own perception, I think we do have free will.
I have a question for you then. So say you were in a different predicament that you're in now or position. Do you think you'll be making the same choices that you're making currently?
Definitely not. Circumstances dictate your eligibility for certain things or your ability to do certain things. So if everybody was to hit me up on 212-256-1358, that's my Cash App, then they could change my situation and I can live tomorrow different.
Oh
Okay.
man,
All righty.
that
To
was
answer
good.
your
That
question.
was
Okay.
yeah.
To
Thank
answer
you.
your question,
Thank
All
you.
right.
what? I got a Cash App. Don't you gonna boot me?
We
Cause I
didn't
got a
say
Cash
Nah,
App.
but
anything.
just
We
so
just
you
Oh,
don't.
know,
okay, okay.
We don't. Yeah, we don't.
nobody
That's not
here
something we
is
doing.
That's New
like
York. Hold
advertising
on.
their
That's New
cash
Yeah,
app
York.
right
it's
You
now.
New
there?
York. It's that New York
Oh,
hustle. Yeah, that New York.
that's that New York. You in there
That's that
hustling,
New York
boy. Let me
hustle.
Yeah,
see what that is.
look.
Do you
Oh,
got
come
a
on,
store with
come
comic
on.
books in it? Let me
I think
see.
you
Come
know this
on, come
Yeah, we
already.
on.
already know. Oh man, knock it
Yeah.
off.
Come on, You ain't know it's me.
Yeah.
It's me.
I had a feeling. I had a
I knew
feeling.
it.
That's
It's me.
hilarious. I'm
It's
Say,
done.
me.
Okay,
all
well,
out
thank you.
here.
Look. Let me show y'all. Let me show you about this
Wait.
choice.
We're gonna move
All right,
on
go
We
with the
ahead.
got a
show.
choice. No
We're moving
Let
on
him
with
go ahead.
the
What you got?
show.
Yeah, he's talking about
Oh
the
choice
my
choice.
between the
god,
Timberlands. Look,
Oh,
you can have what Timbs you want.
I'm done.
What Timbs you want.
I'm so done. I'm in
It's a
Florida.
choice.
I
So
don't
we
need
got
no
running shoes. Look, show them the running shoes.
Oh
Show them the
wow.
running shoes.
Going
Show them
up
the
in
tips.
running shoes.
Bobby,
Look,
I
what
can't
size you
stand
need?
you.
Nike.
Jesus
Nike.
all
Christ.
right, we got you. All right,
All
Look,
right,
that's
thank
fine.
you.
You
We got
oh no,
some
y'all
definitely
don't
other
want the
people on the
you
y'all don't want
stage.
definitely
the
don't
choice.
have a choice but to hustle in New York. So you have
Man,
no
Y'all
choice in
god
that regard.
damn.
see you talking
Ne-
about my situation. I had to let y'all know.
okay.
But
Same
those ain't
here.
my
Mm,
boots. This is my
Sorry,
tape. What?
that's
Okay,
fine.
good night.
Thank you.
mm, mm,
Yeah, next. Google Scholar. Welcome to the panel. Damn.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Happy New Year, Google. How are
Happy New
you?
Year to you too. I hope you had a good 2024 and I hope it's better than last year.
I can dig. Go ahead. Give us your thoughts on the conversation, where you stand, free will free will to be or not to be. Google Scholar.
Okay.
Not the
Okay,
name.
so in my expert opinion, now I'm just playing. So yeah,
mm.
the problem of free will is very difficult, right? And I'm not sure we have free will based on my analysis of what I've read, right? For for example, I know it seems we have choices, right? Or we make choices, and to your conscious brain, it seems like you're actively making choices in certain situations. But I think you should also consider that research on the brain, because you guys did a lot of great shows on the brain, and I was listening in. Research on the brain has shown that actually, um, when we make a decision to do something ourselves, if looking at it rationally, say you stoop down to pick up something off the ground, you would think that okay, your conscious brain tells you that I made that decision to do that and I'm aware. But research has shown that your unconscious brain had already made that decision to do that milliseconds before you're aware of yourself making the decision. So it is complicated in that regard, because if the decision is being made before you're aware of the decision, it's possible that your environment and your circumstances shape the decisions you make, because if it's being made before you're consciously aware that you are doing this, then yeah, I'm saying it's a possibility that determinism could be true. Although I don't know, I can't choose between one or the other. But I would say the question of free will is very interesting. I'm not sure which one is the right one.
Right.
Free
Let me
will
speak to
as
that.
an emergent property of neurological latency. Oh, we got. I'm gonna pencil that one in. And you know what, Google, you never fail to amaze. I think you made the most insightful statement of tonight when you said, "I'm not sure."
No, I'm not sure. I definitely am not.
I
Right.
like that.
Let me speak to that. I
He kind
understand
of threw in
exactly
that
what he's saying.
epigenetics in there, right? You kind of slid that in there, right? Your environment. That's
Your
interesting. Go ahead.
environment, well, all of the things that make you you.
Right. Science
So that
would
so that
use the
that would
word
make us wrong though,
influence.
logic. Think about logic. If epigenetics in your environment affect the way your responses, then once again, it's the
I don't
environment
disagree
doing it,
with
right?
that. I don't disagree with that. But I'm saying science will go as far as to use the word influence, right? And what latency neurology, right? I actually have a guy talking about an experiment that he does where basically his conclusion is that your subconscious does play a major role in your decision making, but however, it doesn't exclude your prefrontal cortex processes, which would be your quote unquote like conscious deliberation, right? So like, and there's different levels of these type of deliberations, right? Like some of them that are very inconsequential, like we watched the video today and the person using the example like such as like who may you invite over to dinner tonight doesn't really require a lot of deliberation, where you might express that in a different way and say your consciousness doesn't maybe play a lesser role in a decision that's not so important. Whereas if I try to decide who I'm gonna marry, something that does have a lot more going into it, where you might see a larger role in your prefrontal cortex trying to make that decision. So they again they kind of they just don't speak in terms of the will being free or not. They acknowledge the external factors play a major role in influencing your decision making, but they would never go as far as to say your subconscious is making the decision for you, right? And then because that would be like saying that your subconscious decided for you, and then you just became aware of it later, which would be an illusion of you actually having some sort of control over your decision. Whereas the actual process, because they don't know all the factors and how they play a part, your conscious decision deliberation the night before could have very well played a very big part in what your decision ultimately is, right? You take somebody that's trying to pick one college over the next, and they do all sort of type of research and they sleep on it. It's not like during their sleep they decided which college they were going to. They woke up and continued to deliberate, and then they wound up making a decision. So whereas your subconscious is playing a role, you still cannot remove the fact that you are the one making the decision, no matter how you reduce the argument to chemicals or biological functions or synapses and neurons. You still cannot remove that you are participating in that decision making process.
Yes, I get what you're saying, but I don't see how your argument eliminates the idea of free will being an illusion, because what you're saying, if correct, it could still be that the decision that you make is based on the factors that happen before you got up to that decision. And if you're saying your prefrontal cortex is what allows you to make those decisions, um then you would still have the whole idea that it may be just be that you're not aware of all the factors that go into it, and because you can't tell all the factors, then it might just be an illusion.
I totally get what you're saying, right? So out of the scientist's mouth, right, he says that yes, all of that would be true, but you still can't remove either one of the processes. You can't remove your subconscious playing a part, and you can't remove that your conscious is actually playing a part. You Both of the things are playing a part, and then they draw a line and say we don't have all the specifics of how that work, but we're not willing to take either one of the processes out. So if it was all subconscious activity, then you would have to adhere to determinism, period, right? Like it's
Yes.
100% determined by factors outside of yourself. But the fact that you can still detect some of you in there, you don't go into the philosophy. You stay right there and call it a rational or a voluntary action. That's
Okay.
what science is.
Okay. So we just had a prime example of why I'm a hard determinist, right? Because just that fast, we slipped into dualism. Just that fast.
You mean as in mind-body dualism?
Just that fast, we just slipped into dualism. As if you and your frontal cortex are separate entities. And that is why I'm a hard determinist. Because whenever we get into this mockery conversation, we start doing this dualistic probabilities and all this other stuff, right? This ghost in the machine. Hey, Logic, Ghost in the Machine, that's in that paper with Haggard too. I just wanted you to know.
That's my favorite anime, by the way.
All right. This idea that you are separate from your brain activity. Right. My position is I am my brain. I am it. When it's damaged, so does my idea of will is damaged. My ability to do such and such goes right along with the damage of the physical brain.
Can I ask a question?
But before you ask that question, I mean, you would say the same. You would say the same for whatever you would want to call the subconscious. I'm not removing myself from my subconscious. That's me.
Right. I agree. Like I'm not a dualist, but I'm not
and I'm not saying it's happening outside my body.
Right. It's all me. See how I can get
all of that's me.
Yeah, because it sounds like what you were saying is that there's no difference between the conscious you and your subconscious. Is that your position?
I'm saying that's all me. Those are all brain processes.
No,
and the
I
brain belongs to
all
me.
You, but you understand that you can make a distinction between the two scientifically, right?
No, I'm not making that distinction.
See, that's where we get into the murky waters of Google Scholar.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not separating me from my subconscious, from my prefrontal cortex, from my prenatal cortex, or my medulla oblongata, the amygdala, whatever you want. It's all me.
All me.
Before we go on, I also want to give a few more people a moment to say their to say their piece. That's so funny. We'd be messing it up. And he's been waiting patiently, and you know, even though, oh my goodness, I don't know, but he's always very consistent, and I will give him that. So, Sunchild, I wanted to give you a few minutes to speak your piece on the conversation, or give us where you stand on free will to be or not to be, and maybe a minute, not even a few.
I was about to say we got to define.
Yeah, we're not gonna let him right. Yeah.
We give him two. We can give him two.
I ain't getting no damn 5 minutes. Shit.
60 seconds.
Nobody's doing that.
Try to advocate for you, Sunchild. You got 60 seconds. Go.
All right. Well, whenever I hear the discussion about free will, it takes me back to the movie I, Robot. You guys remember that movie, I'm sure.
Oh, shit.
The movie was about a robot who started having a sense of himself or of his own will. I, Robot. It's kind of an oxymoron. And when I hear someone say, I do not believe in free will, that's kind of challenging for me, because to not have free will, I believe, is to not have a sense of self, of the I. And I believe that the conversation has to go there. What happens to the concept of the self without free will? You would have to speak of the self as all of the things that are causing you to make a decision. There is now no you. So what do we do with the concept of I or me? Where does that fit into this conversation? And that's what I think is problematic for me. As far as my opinion on it, I think there are some things that are just common sense, and I think we can leave it at that. And I believe that it's common sense that we do have free will. And I think there are just too many things that we would have to get away from. We would have to lose the concept of the self. We'd have to lose the concept of morality. We'd have to lose the concept of truth.
Do you hear the bell? That's time.
And
thanks.
Yeah, I think you're having a different conversation.
Yeah, you have.
Thank
went to
you.
solipsism, which is different.
Right. that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even want to try to unpack
Yeah,
that.
he
So
kind of made us realize whatever side you're on, we want to be on the opposite. Whatever side they
Yeah, I
on,
don't even want to try to
hadn't
So
unpack
quite
that
figured
right
it
there,
out.
bro.
so
I was
so
like,
wait a minute. Wait. Order in the court.
But
So
let me
so
say this.
I,
Let me say this though. Let me say this
you
though.
can, but can I just
Let me
give
say this
some?
though.
Let
Let
me
me
give
just say this.
some rules real quick. Once people speak, I might be removing you because I want to allow other people on the panel.
Yeah,
Sorry.
don't remove him yet. Don't remove him yet though.
Okay,
Hold
Bobby
on.
Finger, go
Because I
ahead.
think what he does is he make us take a strong, hard look at what the fuck we talking about though. Because you never would have been on his side, but he brings in them points. I brought in some points that sounded just like his point. Like we, no matter what, I ain't making that choice. See, so he's like a mirror for me, right? You get what I'm saying? He's a mirror to the conversation. So I appreciate his religious thought on that conversation like that. But yeah, he make you say, interesting. But go ahead.
now
Yeah,
now
the only thing I have is a problem with the word common sense. When we're dealing with science, we don't usually like to revel in common sense, more of critical and logical thinking, because common sense can be subjective, and we're trying to deal with the conversation in a scientific manner and in an objective nature.
And
Yeah.
morality, because
so
that's a
All this is
chemical.
counterintuitive,
so
believe me.
so can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad we all agree that we are our brains. I'm
Hmm.
glad because we had no control over that. We had no control over the genetics that brought our brain about. We had no control over which neurons fire. We have no control over which ones grow through plasticity. We have no control over none of that. Yet somehow you hold that you do, but you are your brain. And you have no control over the structure of your brain at all.
You're conflating.
I'm not. That's what y'all
Yeah,
just said.
you're
You're
conflating.
conflating.
Yeah.
Did
I
y'all
think
not
that's a
just say
great
that?
point.
Did
I
y'all not
think
just
that's a
say
great
that?
point.
We said that we have the power
Yeah.
to make decisions and rational choices
Right. Yeah. What does
in
that got to do with decision making?
moments. None of us are saying that our childhood and our circumstance that we were born in don't have a role to play in our lives. We are saying that there is the opportunities for us to have rational decision making in our lives.
Yeah.
So
Despite
does
those
that
outside
fall? Hold
influences.
on. Does that fall with like so they say people with trauma? How I go to people with trauma
I
do
mean,
what?
if you
Express
suffer
trauma.
if you suffer
Hurt
childhood
people,
trauma,
hurt people.
which
Okay, so hold on. So
or maybe
wait.
you
Let me
don't
finish
hurt
my
people.
point.
Maybe you
Let
just
me
attract
let me
abuse. That's
no. Let me
also
finish.
a possibility.
Let me
Go
finish my
ahead.
point. So if there's studies that show that people that's been molested will molest people. So do they have a choice though? That's what we're really talking about. You know what I mean? Like trauma, people going through trauma and all that. Like where does that fit on this scale of our conversation?
Well, I think that you're making a great point because I think all of us have suffered some type of trauma, but it's a spectrum. So that's why the conversations get so convoluted because somebody may have suffered a certain degree and somebody else, and it may have a different impact. Somebody may have suffered the worst form of trauma and can be some of the most beautiful people on the planet. So it's all, that's, I don't know, Bobby. I guess we'd have to see numbers on that, but trauma is a spectrum too.
I agree with that, Miss Tiffany.
Yeah.
Before we move any further, we got Minister E. Keys on the panel. I want to give them 60
Who?
seconds.
Hold on. Who?
I think that's brass. No, it's not. Oh, y'all just
Oh.
got the logo. I'm so
I was gonna
confused.
say that
Yeah, I'm about
name
to say
sounds like
who
a
he about to
pseudo
get cussed
mashup.
out.
Big
I thought he
Minister
said
Q
E.
Minister
in
E.
Keys.
control.
I say shit. Who?
That's a mashup.
Pseudo killer.
Shit, I was going to lose my
You
whole
was
motherfucking
about,
what?
you was about
You gotta stop doing that, You gotta stop doing that,
I was like, who?
Right?
What?
Get him,
Please,
Just
please,
DQ.
please, please,
all it
please,
was
please,
missing
please.
was the doctor in front of it, right?
But
You
either
just
That
put
was
the
way,
it.
doctor in front.
Minister E. Keys, would you like to give your stance on this particular conversation at this moment?
Well, I definitely just because we were speaking about it so much in the Discord, I started to look into it myself. When I first looked into it, I used to believe that I did believe in free will. I had a misconception of what free will meant. I had to go look into it and understand the amount of outside stimuli that we experience from our first day of birth to this day, which eliminates the free will aspect of me. But yeah, that's my viewpoint. I just like hearing going back and forth with it right now. Seems like Mark is switching sides on me. I mean,
Oh
logic switching
no.
sides. See, like logic switching sides, but yeah, it's all lovely, baby.
I got a question for DQ.
Who
So
is this, Michelle?
yeah.
You already know.
So in everything that you've learned since this conversation started, are you saying that in your day-to-day life, you, DQ, don't make not any rational choices in the moment in your life? Everything that you do,
Don't acquiesce to a faulty premise.
everything that you do. No, that's what these determinists are saying. Everything that we do
What about them lyrics, nigga? What about them powerful
was
lyrics?
predetermined. So you saying everything you do in your life, it was predetermined.
That's not how the determinist definition sounded on the
Oh,
site.
we should read that. We should read that definition again.
Run from it. Yeah, determinist. A hard determinist takes the stance that everything that we do is determined by pre-action.
Yeah,
right?
They use the word inevitable and impossible.
Right. Maybe we should read the definition again. I put it in the private chat.
Scientific definition. I didn't hear anything about the inability to make a choice, though. Still.
Yeah, but what does it say? Let's go back to it.
Oh, let's go back.
Anyway, so while we're going back, DQ, do you think that any choice?
Read that
do you have any decision making ability at all, DQ? DQ.
I plead the fifth.
You don't know. At least he played the fifth.
I just wanted to point out this is what we go through every day, all day in the Discord. For those who like to say that we're an echo chamber, hell no, we're not. We just look cordial in front of the camera for you folks. Don't get it twisted.
I figured out what it was. Everybody, we from dealing with science and all that, and being non-believers or wherever you fall on that spectrum, right? When it comes to something that's dead our heart, like DQ lyrics, he ain't gonna never say his lyrics came through the ethers. He want to say that he made a choice to say that line.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or me, when I say, hold on, dog, every day I choose not to drink a beer. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to get out of the way to something that So this is an interesting conversation, yo.
Hey, and you want to know something?
I'm listening.
Most compatibilists argue, I want y'all to listen very carefully, responsibility and moral reality. But when you actually read their books, they're upset about reward. They want to be able, it's both sides. So it's not just.
I love how he's switching the combo.
I'm not really responding to
let him knock his yacht, girl. Don't do that.
You know what that is? He over there reading about Strawson, because that's why he ain't want to talk about it earlier. He over there reading about Strawson and trying to figure out how you gonna mess with that. Strawson gonna get you, bro. I'm telling you, he gonna get you.
Read about Strawson.
Okay.
Strawson is gonna get you, bro.
One mic.
Argument is
let Marcus dock his yacht.
It's not just moral responsibility, but what do you do about your attainments? What you actually accomplished.
Let's talk about the question I asked you, though, Marcus.
Both sides of them are against. Both sides of them exist on the same thing. So if you say we got moral responsibility for our actions, we also have the ability to accept the reward and praise of doing well. It goes both hand in hand. Right. And as I said before, as soon as you say we are our brains, you have already lost the discussion, because you have no control over the structure of your brain. None.
All right. According to scientific determinism, Marcus, are you saying that DQ makes absolutely no choices or decisions in his life? Everything is predetermined.
I'm saying it's subjective.
Why are you acquiescing to this, man?
You said what you say is what, Marcus?
Miss Tiffany.
No, what do you say, Marcus? It's what?
According to my premise, it is subjective.
Thank you.
She got it, Joe.
Okay.
But here's a question. You said that in terms of this, no control over the structure of the brain, though. Aren't there studies that say, in terms of the activities that you engage in, could actually impact the neurological pathways, the neurological plasticity, and those neurological connections? Those are based on facts. You can potentially impact those based on the activities you engage in.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. In the book, The 7.5 Lessons of the Brain, though, she talked about that, how your thinking and stuff and certain patterns or habits that you can create for yourself can change the way
Right.
your brain operates.
Yeah,
The brain isn't a fixed structure that's static and can't be changed. Okay,
But
it can
put a pin in that.
be changed in the moment where a decision is going to be made in the very second.
See, now listen.
We don't like that though.
I wholeheartedly agree. Which is why,
but you do.
which is why hard determinists
Tiffany is
saying
hilarious.
we need to adjust the structure of society so we can get the best return on investment. See, the what happens is when you deal hard determinists, people think that hard determinism and fatalism are the same thing. They are not. If you listen to the definition that Miss Tiff and Logic both read, they're talking about prior events, prior situations. When you listen to the interview we did with Dr. Andy said you could not go back and change the choices that you make. You got to know the context of the conversation. Fatalism says that no matter what you do,
this is the outcome.
Nothing can change. That is not what hard determinism is saying. That's two separate things. And we know that because evolution is change over time.
Correct.
But at the same time, in that very moment, I can make a rational decision on what I choose.
But determinism says no matter what you do, the outcome is going to be the same.
So what you do, it's crazy. It's like you're running around in a hamster circle. Go ahead, Bob.
Which means it actually defeats itself.
Welcome to philosophy.
Wait a minute, Logic.
It's really self-defeating.
Hold on. When y'all made a decision, when y'all read the scientific definition, when Safa read that definition, and then when you talked about in the book, she talked about the book and how you can rewire your brain, and Brendan talked about how it not been fixed. I'm saying I can actually, I know how that was because I can recall in the situation of my life, and I know it's anecdotal, where I felt like, the top priority in my life was using drugs. And then I could actually take y'all through the steps, not in this conversation, but how it was wild, I didn't know I was rewiring my brain, right? But I remember I had to take stuff back from my childhood and slowly, start making other things more important. And after I got to a certain point, I had a list and where I could weigh that list against my behavior, yo. Now, you know what I mean? That might seem complicated, but that's how I got out of the situation. So are we saying that I didn't make a choice in that? It's just interesting, though. I just want to tell you.
You did. I mean, the scientific definition of determinism includes the word philosophy. And I don't know why Kent is trying to pull that off as some big win. But let me go ahead and read it so y'all can hear it. Scientific determinism is a concept within philosophy of science that suggests natural phenomena follow predictable patterns and can be explained through scientific laws. It's not a belief in the traditional sense, but whether a framework for understanding causality in the natural world based on empirical evidence and observation. So remember when Bobby had the debate with Sekou and we kept asking what his framework for African spirituality was, and he could never tell us.
Correct.
We agreed that African spirituality also goes into the area of philosophy. We talked about that. So again, scientific determinism is a concept within philosophy of science that suggests natural phenomena follow predictable patterns and can be explained through scientific laws. It's not a belief in the traditional sense, but rather a framework for understanding, that's all philosophy, understanding causality in the natural world based on empirical evidence and observation. So we cannot forget that last part of it. But I'm saying the point is, y'all trying to get away from the philosophy part of this discussion, and it's always there. It's not going anywhere.
Nobody's trying to get away, but we did discuss the involvement from it being philosophy to a scientific conversation. Totally.
But even the definition
about it, and let's not confuse the philosophy of religion with the philosophy of science.
No. I brought that up because it's a framework. It's the framework, and that's why. And that framework is to help people understand the framework for understanding the causality in the natural world based on empirical evidence and observation. But that's what the philosophy in and of itself is. That's why we're saying, like, y'all have y'all's position, but just understand that neither one of our side can necessarily claim to be the winner here in this conversation.
But like you're weighing on in the philosophy part, of that definition. I'm weighing on that last part of the definition. So read the last part of it one more time.
Read it again for the umpteenth time. No problem. So it's not a belief in the traditional sense. I don't even know why I don't even know why the definition has to say not in the traditional sense, but it does. It's not a belief in the traditional sense. So maybe in another way it is a belief, but rather a framework for understanding causality in the natural world based on empirical evidence and observation. It's still included in the philosophy of science.
It also
no matter, and that's fine. So it's both and. It's both and I can agree that I've already said that I agree that past experiences. I've already said I agree that past experiences play a role in our decision making in our life. I mean, that to me that is a literal no-brainer, right? But I'm saying that in the moment of making many choices in our lives, we are making our own rational decisions. Which deviates from this whole idea that was predetermined a million years ago. If I have fries, a hamburger, and a ham sandwich in front of me, you're not telling me that shit, whatever, however I came to that conclusion, goes
the
way.
Rabbit is running wild. The rabbit.
Just about to cut somebody out.
The rabbit.
No,
there it go. There it go.
Let me stop.
There you go. The rabbit.
All decisions aren't necessary.
Man, the canines. I see she's bearing her canines.
Hey, Juju, the rabbit came. We seen the rabbit.
Yeah, but again, like I keep saying from the beginning of this conversation, let's not forget that this particular conversation is kind of cut in the middle. We know it, but it's also, in my I'll say educational opinion, from what I've been educated on, what I can attest from it is moving away from the philosophical stance more to the science. Like, it's making a transition. Let's keep that in mind. Let's keep in mind when we talked about linear and non-linear science and what that's about. So again, there's lots of implications surrounding the conversation versus just the conversation itself. And I want the audience to understand that and maybe do a little bit more background work on that part for us in the Discord and those who are listening. That's kind of the points that I'm trying to make here also. But yeah, moving forward. Anybody else have anything to say about that? We are coming into the 2-hour mark. I don't want to make the discussion too long. We are going to get back to this in Clubhouse and on YouTube some more.
Yes.
So be waiting on that. But
yes.
Go ahead.
So
Kent running. He's definitely running.
I want to be clear on some. I would like to be clear on some points. And one of the hardest things for science to really address is subjective experience, right? We know that, we have a position, right, in evolution that between the common ancestor of the mammal and the reptile, there was a duplication and a mutation on a gene. And out of that came oxytocin and what's the word? It starts with an S. Oxytocin and it's not serotonin. It's another one. Hold on, give me a second. Let me find that because I don't want to miss.
You talking about the chemicals for the morality?
Yeah, the chemical for pair bonding.
Thero. I can't even. Man, I'm supposed to know that, man. You said oxytocin. No, that's not it. Oxytocin and something with I can't think of it too. Yeah, but go ahead. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about. Find it, Marcus.
Yeah. Don't lose. Yeah, I'm gonna find it because I want to make sure I'm accurate. Give me a second. Somebody go ahead and finish while I pull that up, and then I'll finish my point. We'll see about it.
I will say something though. In terms of I always go back to the idea or the concept of the rational decision maker, right? And for me, this is one of those personal, like in what Unc was saying, anecdotal type things. I just have, a disposition against the idea of saying you're going to wrestle my ability in terms of affecting desired outcomes out of the hand of the rational decision maker, right? So this whole thing there, everything that you guys are sort of talking about right? I always go back to that. It's like, okay, me and my a self-identifying rational decision or even irrational decision maker sometimes, right? So this philosophical conversation is sort of challenging that idea, right? And I think that's one of the key parts of this that sort of drew me into the conversation.
Nice.
Me too. Me too. I feel like the first time I heard it described in the Discord, y'all know exactly where my mind went. Like, right. So how would I apply determinism to things that I would hold near and dear to myself, which are subjective, right? But it would concern me as far as, what does that leave for me in my sentiments towards inequality and things like that, that I would assume that we all have some kind of interest in, or have, or at least interested in the history of things like inequality and slavery like that. So that's exactly what drew me into the conversation as well.
Yeah, it challenges your identity as as a self, right? So this is, it becomes sort of like, as I sort of went through it, especially on the conversation I had with Cedric, sort of going through it and understanding where he came from. And I mentioned this earlier, the whole idea about, these outcomes, right? These outcomes being sort of, I wouldn't even say, I don't want to use the word predetermined, or these inevitable outcomes, right? Being that even though they aren't something that you can predict, or something that you can say, okay, we've got forethought in terms of what will happen, but it is the emergent outcome out of these immeasurable numbers of variables, right? That we, as humans, we could never fully sort of grasp and control, right? But the ultimate outcome of that whole collection of outcomes, these incalculable outcomes, will always be the same, right? And he said, Brendan, think about it in terms of chemistry, right? And how he said within chemistry, what we do, we reduce the number of variables to have predictable outcomes, and we control the situation, right? It says, think of the natural world expanding upon that, right? You're adding additional variables on top of that, more and more variables to where there's an illusion of randomness, but in reality, there is no real randomness. It's just an unfathomable amount of calculations and variables that we don't fully understand. So it's a fascinating conversation to me.
I enjoy it.
I've got a question, Brendan. Do you think that delves into the quantum conversation when you talk about the vast possibility of randomness and possibilities?
The idea that even, that you can have a superposition, right? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Right. It even adds additional. I didn't even think about it from that perspective. But when you actually add the concept of quantum superposition on top of, discrete randomness, or what we call pseudo randomness, it even becomes even more, I guess you would say, intriguing. So yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask you a question right quick, Brendan? Right, because I'm reading right.
Marcus,
I'm reading.
Let me know when you're ready. But go ahead, Logic.
I'm reading right here. It says from Berkeley University right here. The mechanisms of evolution, like natural selection and genetic drift, work within a random variation generated by mutation. So would you say chance is also one of these factors?
Here's the thing. When you say random mutations, right? Within science, randomness is not in the sense of the layperson when you say randomness, when you say random mutations or chance and these things. Yeah, and again, right, I got this out of the conversation I was having with Cedric in terms of what the scientific concept of randomness is. Just the concept of uncalculable, or the number of variables that go into a particular system, or that go into this phenomenon, is something that we cannot necessarily predict or control, right? So when you take a look at genetic randomness, when we say, okay, well, genetic mutations are random, right? It's just that we can't, at this point in time, with our level of scientific understanding, we don't know enough about all the variables that go into play for that outcome for us to be able to predict it. So the concept of the term randomness is placed on that sort of as a placeholder. But is it really random? Right? That's the key question. Is it really random?
I mean, it's a question, right? So like one of the first examples that I understood with the natural selection thing, when Unc showed me the peppered moth, right? The peppered moth went through genetic drift or mutation due to like pollution in the environment, right? Nothing nature related, something that people actually just byproduct offhand chance that this happened. So how would you describe that without using random?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, that's a question for you. How would you describe?
No. Whoa. What happened was it's just motherfuckers that stood out on that tree more got ate, and meaning they didn't make it to the age of reproduction. So over time, based off an environmental pollution, made the tree darker. Those that was lighter died more often than those who were darker that blended in. So that's called natural selection.
So I'm being specific, right? How would you describe the predicament of the tree getting darker without using the word random?
Oh, the tree got darker because of the pollution. They was burning too much fossil fuel, and so those white trees had that soot on it.
That's
and I'm saying that had nothing to do with nature, had nothing to do with just natural processes. I'm saying would
you burn trees. Well, okay, all right. You're saying the actual smog. Yeah, it had something to do with humans. Humans had something to do with humans.
Right. I mean that's a variable that you wouldn't be able to calculate 500 years ago necessarily, right?
Yeah. Like they ate too much of they ate all the daggone mastodons up. So it caused ecological, imbalance. It's crazy. That's humans.
So Brendan, does that fit?
And here's the thing. I think the key to your question is, okay, if we can't predict it, then it's random, right? It's something that couldn't be predicted 100 years ago, right? And that's not what the scientific concept when they talk about these random all these different variables that go into the particular outcome of events. That's not really what they're saying, and that's what I had to kind of wrap my head around during some of these conversations, right? The idea that something, just because it's not predictable, that doesn't mean that it's not random. Again, right? That's the concept I had to put my head around.
Okay.
And it's a hard concept. I actually posted a video over the last 2 days about that very specific thing about chaos theory. Right?
Yeah, I haven't been able to slow down and watch that yet.
Yeah, no problem. But that's chaos theory, right? The idea that as many more factors play a part in it, the harder to predict a predictive model it is.
Right. Which gives the illusion of randomness. Right.
Right.
And isn't that something that I'm going back to quantum again? That's something that quantum computing is supposed to help. It's supposed to help navigate. I don't know that. I'm gonna look it up, but I'm thinking that's something that, because when we're dealing with probability and predictions, you're also dealing with math, some type of equation.
Possibility. That's a possibility when you're talking about quantum computing.
Right. Computing will allow you to.
Right. You're talking about developing computational engines that are more powerful and that can run computations at a level that's unprecedented. Right. So any time when you say, okay, well, I have a computational engine that can run simulations at levels that we've never accomplished. Yeah, I think we're getting closer to make those predictions. That's how we've made those predictions in the past through our simulations from a computational perspective. Like for instance, like weather, in terms of making weather predictions and things like this.
Brandon,
we do things like that.
Brandon, we're gonna talk on that. We're gonna talk on that. That's coming up.
Yeah, I was about to have another question.
Mark say pump them brakes.
Yeah, slow down. I had to tell Sage did the same thing.
You
Save
got
the
this
distinct.
logic.
We was in the Discord for a second right there, huh?
Yeah, y'all agree. Go
I
to
mean,
the
It's really
subject.
like what it's like. That's the
So,
point.
wait a minute.
Marcus, you and Logic, you put the brakes on us when we're having
Exactly,
a
because that might
conversation,
be
right?
part of the
So
debate.
you put the
Exactly.
brakes on us
They have
where
every right to do
we're
that.
needed. Absolutely.
Because in some sense, one of the problems that compatibilists use is the unpredictability of determinism, and that's a conversation that we may have to tackle. I don't want to give them too much of the history on that.
Now you're good. Did you want to go ahead? Did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
We
So
are
it's
at the 2-hour mark. So I think I want to wind down the show. What you all think? Y'all want to keep going, or how y'all feel about it?
I'm good on time.
I'm
If
good on time.
y'all
Is
want
it
to keep going.
thylacine? Is it thylacine? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's oxytin and vasopressin.
Vasopressin. That's right.
Yeah. So
say it again. Say the two again.
It's oxytin and vasopressin.
Oxytocin and vasopressin. Yep.
Somebody
Y'all just
gotta
have to
mute.
mute. You two have to mute out each other when you're talking. Sorry.
Okay. All right, it's going away. So when we talk about you are your brain, and what I mean by you're not truly free, and we'll give the definition on what truly free means.
Free. This sounds like I'm sorry. It sounds like we delving into another conversation. But go ahead. We ain't free.
No.
Go ahead, Mark.
Nah, let me hear this. I want to hear what truly free means. I'm interested.
So
no disruptions, please, you two. Thank you. Go ahead, Marcus.
Those two chemicals affect behavior. It's not necessarily a question of do they. That's been established. To what extent is where they're talking about. Millions of years ago, that common ancestor between mammals and reptiles, had a duplication, and over the course of time, mutations. Those mutations brought about two similar hormones. Vasopressin is used in oxytocin. They used to call it the love hormone because when people got when they were looking at the birthing process, they seen that these chemicals increased in animals as well as in humans. They did some studies on that. I'm not going to be using these specific studies in the conversation, where they were able to manipulate people with vasopressin and oxytocin, and their behavior immediately changed. They were more cordial. They were more nice. They found people who looked like them to be more appealing. I see no will in that, right? I see a hormone that is affecting the firing of neurons. And those firing of neurons give the impression that now this person is nicer, irregardless to the fact. And so that is my ultimate position, is that these factors play such a significant role, such a manageable sense that you had no control over that. You had no control over what gene variant of vasopressin you had. You had no control over that, whether you have this amount of receptors or this amount of receptors. And based on that, your body and you behave differently. And so you are your brain, and you have no control over your brain. Even when you look at Lisa Barrett's voice, she says that this only helps to have the brain predict better. It just makes better predictions because of the information available. And then she goes on and explains what she hopes people in society would grasp from this conversation. Robert Sapolsky, Sam Harris, they all say the same exact thing, that if we could just get people beyond that one point, we can structure society to get a better return on investment. If you know children brought up in poverty, if you know children who can't read by the 6th grade are more likely to end up in prison, let's focus on fixing that.
But we already know that, Marcus. I'm sorry, but they already do that. We already know that.
But you said somehow or another the will can change those factors, and I'm not saying that.
That's not what I said. If I wanted to say that, I would actually have said that. Now you're dealing with a population model. We already know that they make predictions based on certain things. I would never deny that. That's why I keep reiterating that I know that our past does play a role in the life that we have and a lot of the choices that we make. I am saying that there are opportunities in our day-to-day life where we're actually making rational decisions for ourselves. But if you want to use that little nice spiel you had with the gospel music playing in the background, I know that wasn't you, but that's what it sounded like to
Shots fired. Marcus.
Oh my God.
Finish her.
Finish
her now.
about how better the world could be and how we can help these children. You know, they already made these predictions. They built prisons based on second grade reading scores.
Mute, Bobby. This is too good.
I'm with you, Miss Till. I'm doing it for the children.
Oh my
The children need
But
it.
here's-
Amazing grace.
here's the issue with that, Miss Tiff. Here's the issue with that. You can't. You're making an assumption that at one point in time this plays a factor.
Wait a minute,
and then
Bobby.
at another point in time,
Wait.
Wait,
Y'all have to mute and one at a time, please. Please
So-
mute.
Okay, so you made an assumption that these things play a factor, but at one point, at the moment I'm about to make a decision, those factors become different, they disappear, and I make a rational decision. And what I'm saying is rationality is still a function of the brain, that there is no other options to it. There's no point where you step in and make a separate decision from your brain. I have seen no evidence of that. The only thing I've seen evidence is neural behavior. And if it's neurological behavior, it is subjugated to the same laws. I see no place where you could make a decision outside of that. If you can find one, I'll be more than happy to take on a different position. Because believe it or not, it's harder to stand here and say, hey, listen, you don't make decisions.
Okay. Let's talk about the children. Let's go back to what's going to help the children if we change, if we go with your model. How's that going to help the children? Let's go.
Not my model.
Well, the model you're discussing, how is that, if the whole world adopts it, how is that going to help those children with those bad reading scores at a young age?
Ask that question again. Ask that question again.
How is your position of the world taking on a deterministic view? How does that help those children with those low reading scores in their future?
Well, we already have examples. And I believe God Killer already brought up examples where when science has proven a point to be based in one thing, we change the laws and structures to fit that. Now we got pushback now because
no. Tell me specifically how it applies to children with low reading. He's about to go somewhere else with it.
He's not.
He is. Tell me about the children with the low reading scores.
And were those scores inevitable?
Goalpost, but let him finish.
Were they inevitable?
Nah, he brought it up. I want to hear how it's gonna help them babies.
So, based on hard determinism, not fatalism, but hard determinism, things can change. Your behavior today affects the predictability of your brain tomorrow. When you read, according to Lisa Barrett and others, when you learn to read and comprehend, because we want to make sure comprehension goes in, it affects the neurological connections, the synapses in your brain. By that happening, you are able to make better predictions. So that is what they're arguing. So when you look at Sapolsky, because I know logic is going to bring him into it, he looks at it from a collective point of view, which is if we know kids in poverty have a propensity to commit crime in America, now I got to be specific, in Western philosophy, in the Western culture, then why not fix poverty so that you can have different predictions on what those children maybe do? That does not mean that every single kid now outside of poverty won't commit crime. That's not the argument. The argument is what will give you the best return on investment. Lisa Barrett says it's an individual concept in which once you know this, your brain has already began to change and adjust where it can make better predictive models. Sam Harris, on the other hand, argues that even in the confines of this, right, there is an aspect in which the mind can still evolve based on new information. And so what I'm saying is, based on all those people, that is my position.
Which your scientist?
Yeah.
What?
Not
Which your
clear at all.
scientist?
The inevitability argument falls apart with that.
This shit don't make sense at all.
Exactly.
Marcus fell flat.
We have to throw inevitability out of the window with that.
I never said
Completely
it
out.
was.
You just gave all kind of possibilities.
So again, if you read the
he
definition of determinism, they say that the choices that you made could not have been. Just read it. See when they're talking about in the future or past tense.
Yeah, that. I'm sorry.
Look, so
Fell flat.
So
Because
let me make a quick comment on what you said earlier, right? Because this is where I lightheartedly start calling you the expert, right? Because you mentioned oxytocin, and even when you're describing the effect that it has, I noticed that you used the word effect, and you didn't use the word determine somebody's mood or mind state, right? So in the second part that I'm curious about was, I feel like you know that they haven't completely understood the way mood and mindset actually occurs in the brain, right? So I feel like you're kind of giving me this definitive position, whereas when science will talk about it, they're not quite certain exactly how that happens, even though they understand oxytocin plays a role.
So when we talk about evolution, right, when they get into the mechanisms, the concept and the mechanisms of evolution is where the discussion is at. We all agree to that, except now you want to make it different in the conversation of science. So, of course, they don't know all the mechanisms that go into decisions on the processes of the brain. If you look at think fast and slow, right? They talk about two neural operating modules in the brain, one for that ready action potential that you talk about, and the other for those conscientious slow processes that happen through brain networking connections, right? Both of those things are biological processes. I'm not denying that. I'm saying that it's only biological. And if it's only biological, then it's subjugated to the same laws as everything else. That's all I'm saying. Nothing more.
Right, and that's where the conflation happens.
Yeah.
So since it's biological, then it must be determined or predetermined or predictable in some fashion, and that's just not true.
When you just admitted they don't even understand all the parts that go into decision making. So it's that part that they don't know that probably makes all the difference. Just like we're 99.9% the same as everybody else, but that it's that little piece that makes all the difference in the world.
And so,
yeah, not to mention one of your experts actually described the process of neuroplasticity basically as being that it's ever changing, right? Like there is no fixed state of the brain of none of this, which basically means that there's possibilities.
But you don't control which neurons change in plasticity. You don't control it.
Yes, we do, because we are our brain. We are ourselves.
Gotta let him finish.
When do you get control to say this neuron and my prefrontal cortex should get bigger? When do you make that decision? Or is it a process that happens in the brain? When do you make the decision? I'd like to answer that.
I'm not gonna go as far as that, right? I'm gonna try to add clarity to the whole conversation, right? And try to throw in a word from Ann Churchland, who's actually a determinist. She used the word control, right? So if I ask that same question of when am I in control and when am I out of control, I think it's a lot easier to kind of get what we're actually trying to say. Because that's really what we're talking about. When am I in control of myself making a decision versus myself not being in control? And basically what you're claiming is that I'm never in control.
What I'm saying,
Marcus just admitted that they don't know all the processes that go into making decisions. That's
so you could never use a word like we're never in control.
So again, this is what happens to the arguments when we start talking about this. And so basically what Miss Tiffany and Logic is attempting to do is to use the same concept that they use in God. I see no difference in the argument.
Who brought up
Basically, what
God?
you're saying is science hasn't disproven it, so my assumption of free will got to be true. And I'm saying y'all got it backwards.
I ain't said that. See, don't be putting words in my mouth.
Wow. He hit you with a.
Hold on, but y'all
I'm not gonna say it.
You ain't
but
have
he
to
almost
say it to say it.
That scarecrow is out in the field. He's taking a stick. He's taking a stick.
Running out, so he gotta start. He digging deep in that bag.
It's a lot of straw. It's a lot of straw in that scarecrow out in the field. He took a stick
how dare they ask? I ain't gonna let him team up.
Ain't nobody say nothing about God.
I got you, bro.
Right. That's an appeal to emotions, but thank you.
You don't have to say anything about God.
That's straw man.
Hold on, man.
I don't know.
How y'all gonna ask him what it's gonna do for the children, though?
Knowing
that. Hold on. Knowing that, if when we say it's deterministic and we say that external forces cause people to be who they are, doesn't that mean that we can develop programs to help children at a young age to kind of deter them away from these things?
Yeah, but unless
we don't have no choice.
Right.
Not if we don't got no choice.
No. But look. So knowing this, you're going to develop the programs that are going to make it's going to deter them in a. Come on, it's going to influence them to go in the right directions.
How?
Like knowing.
But why you use the word influence instead of determine, bro?
Just because there's programs there, they ain't got to go to them.
No, they don't. But it's going to make there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee at all, right?
So what society is going to literally waste money with programs? I mean, not to say that there ain't.
When you say there's no guarantee, that's not determinism.
No. Not to say they're not already programs, because we could also say that there are. No, there are already programs out there. We all know that. But unless you make it a law, unless you make it mandatory that if you don't do that, then you go into jail if you don't send your kids these programs. You can't make them go.
Look, there's no guarantee that these programs are going to work 100% of the time. What I'm saying is, how many of us went to recreation leagues and stuff like that steered us in the right way, right? Because they know that you get children involved in doing things that's productive to society, you're going to come out with better adults. So of course, knowing determinism, if you studying determinism and you knowing that, okay, boom, these things lead to this type of behavior, you're going to go right to the source of that behavior and try to get it fixed at the childhood age. That's what I'm saying. That's how you help the kids. That's what I was saying about that.
Right. So, and I'm saying, so with there being no guarantees, you got to throw the inevitability out the window. You
can't.
No, it's not inevitable. You start breaking apart determinism at that point.
The kids. We talking about the kids. No, we talking about what Tiffany say about the kids.
Let me.
How's it gonna benefit the kids? Now you talking about something different. Logic.
Let me share this source from Logic. He'll be using this, and I want you to read this section right here. It says, more importantly, the conscious intention to make an action seems to cause the action itself. We feel we have free will. Most neuroscientists are suspicious of this idea because it implies a ghost in the machine. Now, that is what I just said. That is.
Wow. Really? So read the conclusion. Read the conclusion, Marcus.
You want to read the conclusion? You're not going to use it? Because I'm ready for it.
Just read the conclusion, yo. I don't need to use it. I just want you to read the conclusion.
All right, let me get it back up.
Wow.
Let's
just read the first two sentences of the conclusion.
Don't do it.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to read one part of it. We're going to get the whole context.
Somebody read the conclusion. Somebody read it.
Go ahead.
let me see. Voluntary action is one of the most characteristic features of the human brain. Modern neuroscience rejects the traditional dualist view of volition as a causal chain from the conscious mind. I need y'all to get that. From the conscious mind or soul to the brain and body. Rather, volition involves brain networks making a series of complex open decisions between alternative actions. The
right there.
The pre-SMA is a key node in a network of areas that contribute to these decisions. Further investigations will focus on decisions that inhabit voluntary action and the contribution of predictive monitoring. These decisions involve a medial prefrontal area, anterior and classic pre-SMA. One reason neuroscience lasted fascination with violation is the central role of conscious experience in voluntary action. This is now being studied systematically.
Central role of conscious experience. Go ahead.
Brain datum, whereas in the heyday of behavioral, it was dismissed as a mere illusion. Future neuroscience neuroscientific work could benefit from the development of rigorous approach of phenomenologically action, including better measurements of conscious experience. Neuroscience studies systems by the classic engineering principle of intervening to control inputs and then measuring outputs. Only a few special situations such as neurosurgical exploration and brain-computer interfacing allows intervention control of human voluntary motor system. Well-designed scientific studies that use these situations could provide new insights into the volitional brain. Finally, modern neuroscience is shifting towards the view that violence is being based on specific brain processes rather than being a transcendental feature of human nature. This will have important ethical implications for the interactions between brain science and wired society and will inform discussions about social level and individual responsibility.
I like that. That's a
basically it throws dualism out the window, right? It dismisses the notion that is an illusion, and the brain is able to make choices with alternate possibilities. That's it. And not one time did they have to get into the slippery definition of free will. Not one time.
Logic is that what is being described is not free will. That's the point.
Yeah, not based on your definition. But all I've ever said is you got the ability to make decisions, yo. That's all I've ever said. Haven't changed from it. Haven't moved.
Nah, that ain't all you ever said, goddamn. Ain't all you ever said.
What I just described. What I just described is not free will. What I just described.
Okay. So look, you with all seriousness though, you
said I accept brain processes, and you are.
So no, hold up, yo.
That is not compatibilist. That's not what they're making the
So
argument.
with all honesty, you cherry picked the article and read the part that you liked. And all I'm saying is, just for clarity, so everybody get what the part that I'm trying to highlight is, just read the first two sentences of it. Make it clear. I don't want everybody to get lost up in all the other terms that he throw out there, because at the end of the day, he's saying that you do make voluntary actions, and he describes the voluntary actions in the first two sentences. Does he not? Is that not what he's doing?
Again, if you want to go based on the first two sentences, I am okay with you doing that. I prefer to read the whole thing in context.
Nah, that's why you cherry pick the one part that you like, man.
And I read the conclude. I responded to Brandon saying that I was doing the straw man or whatever, to tell him that it is in the conversation about this ghost in the machine, this idea that you are separate from your brain. Now, I gave you your source that you wanted. I read the source. I had already read it.
Man, let me pull it up, man.
And then the conclusion is very clear that what I said about it being a brain process only, I haven't changed from that point at all. that
And I
there is
think a lot of people
other
agree.
thing that comes in and changes that process. And if it is a brain process, I need you to tell me when you got control over that brain.
So let me, all right, he's looking for the article. Let me say this. So I heard Kent, I heard a few other people say that we will be able to develop better programs to help the babies. Am I correct in that? Did I hear that
Yes,
statement?
sir. Yep. Yes, sir.
So my fundamental question is, how in the hell would we choose to make a program? And then how would the parents choose to send their kids there if we have no choice? I'll end with that.
It still goes back to how we was raised. Like, how was you raised, right? You chose to put your kids in sports and things of that nature because maybe you saw how the programs did for people in your neighborhood growing up. It all goes back to like past experiences. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Chose,
complex.
see?
It's
Still
complex.
chose though. I'm just saying, but I
Yeah,
still chose my mother. I mean,
right. But you
it's
chose
choosing.
based on you chose based on the options given, based on what you experienced when you was growing up. You know
Okay,
what I'm
but
saying?
that
You knew that growing up, what it did for you. So
no,
therefore
no,
it
no. That shit
influenced
I
you to
can't use my example. That shit didn't work. Yeah,
no, but it but
yeah.
it but it worked for a lot of people around you. But you saw the
No,
value
no,
in it.
no, no.
You saw
Nobody
the
think that.
value
No,
in it
no,
though.
we all,
You
no,
saw
we all,
you had
we
to
all
see the
hustle.
value in it at some point.
Well, yeah, yeah, for a minute until it did. But
Right.
the point I want to make is, you said choices though. So that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking something we not understanding here. I
Right.
swear,
There's no
there
guarantee that
has to be.
everybody's gonna choose. There's no guarantee that everybody's gonna choose what's beneficial for the society.
No,
Let's say
no,
that.
no, no, no. If we don't have any choices, then how can we choose? If we don't
Right.
have
That's not
choices.
I mean,
determinism.
we're
So I'm
using
just trying to figure it
we're
out. That's
using the
all I'm
word.
saying. Is
I
I
mean,
don't
we
think it's
we
something
just
we can
using it for
understand. That's
argument's
all.
sake. We're using it for argument's sake at
No,
this
no,
point.
let's not use it for argument's sake.
Okay.
I need debate it. So I just understand that even the experts putting this particular material out, there's
Mm-hmm.
stages where they just don't. They be like, I don't know, and they'll laugh. So
Right.
there's no consensus here, right? And I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation, but come on,
No,
man,
no,
you
it's
can't.
no consensus. But hold on, it's no consensus. But they have to first show where free will is. Like free will is the claim. Let's not forget that. So
Oh
in order
yeah,
for
I
us
don't
to
believe in
even
free
have this
will.
argument, for us to even have this argument, somebody has to say, "Yo, this is proof of free will."
I ain't doing a free will. Remember, I tapped out on that though.
That's the
Nobody's
claim.
doing
That's
it.
all.
Who's
That's all I'm
making
saying.
that
That's the
argument? Who's making that claim? Who
well.
on
When you
this
say
panel
you're
is making that
when you
claim?
say you're a compatibilist, you're saying there's a little bit of free will, right?
No, but you got
If
to
there's
let
a little
people
bit of
state
free
their
will,
actual claim. No, you have to, in a discussion like this, we have to have, it's like we have to, what an intellectual honesty. We have to allow people to actually state their claim and we stick to that. When we go outside the box
right?
and,
Right.
add some other stuff to it, it conflicts the conversation.
Nah,
But
logic already said what
I don't think Logic made the claim that you're saying he made. That's
he
why,
said. So
that's why I,
compatibilism means there's a little bit of free will. Am I
yeah,
right or wrong, Logic?
but that's not the same as saying what you just said. And
What
that's
you
why I
mean?
asked both of the gentlemen to put their positions so we can always refer to it. So we
Hold on,
don't get
Logic,
lost in the sauce.
brother, Logic. Does that does that
He
does
ain't
that
here.
not mean? Oh, then he left.
See, you saying what does that mean? Just ask the man what his position is.
I already know
Wouldn't
it,
it be
man. Look,
better?
we've been arguing for the last 2 months. You think I don't know what his position is by now?
He
Like,
said human beings have enough freedom inside of determinism to be held responsible for our actions. That's his position. This is official position.
yeah. So that switched the whole conversation. But go ahead. Y'all
Well,
got
I
it.
mean, they're the debaters, so I guess the conversation has evolved from when we first initially had it. So I think it's just important to keep it
Now
on
we're talking.
No, logic
Now
is
we're talking
trying to
about. We're
or a
talking
lot.
about a
logic.
question that
Logic.
we're talking about a question that Marcus asked. The what's the guy's name that interviewed probably about a month or two ago? Dr. Andy.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about the uh uh what do we do after we find out there's no free will? Like what's the word, Marcus? What you asked him? You remember?
I asked them two questions involving that, and the second one that you're referring to is
Social
so
implications.
right,
What's the
the
social
social
implications?
implications. So
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 that's
what
what.
what
Yeah.
so what it is that, and we heard it a little bit today, and you're going to hear it a whole lot more, and that is most of the compatibilists will stick with moral responsibility, and they're saying ultimately How can we, if free will, if determinism is incompatible with free will, what do we do about moral responsibility, right? And in that moral responsibility is also, what do we do about our achievements and our rewards? And so, it's a plausible question that they pose. Society is based on the understanding of people are wholly responsible for their actions. But then we start to add caveats to it. Is a 2-year-old really responsible for taking a piece of candy out of a store, right? We start to add caveats to the whole conversation. So I ask questions like, okay, well, if what you're saying true, when do you become responsible wholly for your actions? Is it 13? Is it 19? Is it 25? What culture influences play a role in that, right? Are there some cultures that have moral responsibility different than what we have in Western society? And if so, what do you do about that? Are you saying they're now morally irresponsible because your culture doesn't agree with what they do?
Not only that, isn't morality subjective at the end of the day?
It is. I've always held that belief. So, we'll find out when we had this conversation.
But it's absolutely a part of the professional conversation, right? So rather than me trying to navigate through that, right? Why wouldn't I just say voluntary action is one of the most characteristic features of the human brain? Modern neuroscience rejects traditional dualist view of volition as causal chain from the conscious mind or soul. Rejects it to the brain and the body, right? Rather, volition involves brain networks making a series of complex and open decisions between alternative actions. The brain is, the science says the brain is clearly capable of doing it. They don't argue that. They don't attempt to navigate, is it free? How much free is it? They call the action voluntary. And they call it voluntary because it's open decision between alternative actions. Why can't I just leave it there?
Because what you have argued earlier today is that I'm making a conscious decision. But you just said that it's rejected in that context. That it
no, I said they reject traditional dualist view of volition. That's what I said they reject.
Which is what?
Which is there's a separate mind, body, and soul.
Which is a top-down view, which is that you can consciously make an action outside of the unconscious mind.
Huh?
Yeah. See,
I clearly said that conscious and unconscious are both playing a role. I clearly said that.
So according to you, modern science rejects the traditional dualist view of volition as a listen to the words they're using, causal chain from the conscious mind or soul to the brain and body. That means that if you argue that you consciously change what you're about to do, you've already crossed over the dualist. I've been telling you that the whole time because that's
not what that's saying. Why is the word soul right there? Why did you skip over it just now?
I didn't. I said or soul. Or soul. That means they're saying both of them. It didn't say conscious mind and soul. It says or soul. So that means if you believe it's a soul doing it or you believe it's your conscious mind doing it, they're both dualists. And I've been telling you that the whole time. Your own source tells you that.
And it says rather, volition involves brain networks making a series of complex and open decisions. Right? It goes on. It doesn't end there. It says open decisions from alternate actions. In determinism, there is no alternate action.
Again, I'll say it again. If you attempt to say that conscious action overrides or influence from a top-down view of the subconscious mind, you are promoting dualism. If you say the soul does it, dualism. The spirit does it, dualism. It is what it says.
At this point, I'm reading from the source.
And what I'm saying is, I've already argued and said numerous times, you are simply your brain activity, nothing more, nothing less. And if you are your brain activity, you need to show me when you have control over that. The genes that play a role, the influences that play a role, the hormones that play a role. Tell me when you have control over that. Because
Right.
that's what you would need to say free will. It's compatible with determinism.
Yeah,
When
that's
do I have
powerful.
control over what? Say that again.
tell him
I
again,
would be
Mark.
I would be careful with that one, because
Tell him again,
then
Mark.
only thing you have to show is involuntary action. You know, is like what is
A
I mean,
span.
that's
what
still the brain.
defines
That's still the brain.
involuntary
No, nope,
actions?
A
nope.
span.
Brendan, that's still the.
Again,
Hey,
because
Brendan, no, hold on,
we
Brendan.
have
That's
to
still the brain.
stay within the again,
Brendan.
right? I would like to keep the conversation within the confines of the philosophical pieces that we're talking about, because once we step out of that, right, it could be easy to show, okay, well, there is a concept of voluntary action, right? So only thing at that point, only thing logic has to show you is examples of voluntary action, right?
Which is what I
But
started my whole conversation with talking about.
but here's the thing. I don't deny the content of voluntary action. I'm saying that voluntary action is not a conscious endeavor in the sense of
It's a pseudo voluntary. It's almost like a false voluntary
It's an
action.
illusion of
as if
Yeah, it's
voluntary.
as if
It's the brain tricking me into
I
thinking
say
I'm
that,
doing it. That's what it is, yo.
and I say the same thing about the choice. I think mentioned the idea of the choice, right? Do we really have a choice, or is it, or is this a pseudo choice or a false choice? You know, in terms of our concept of choice, is it really a choice? You know,
I have no problem accepting that the brain will deceive and get you to have an impression of one thing that is not, that it is not. And that source, that logic that me and logic is talking about, actually begins to talk about that. But there are other sources that involve in that. But I want to make sure we clear on what the source says, right? Because I don't want to misstate what it says. Voluntary action is one of the most characteristic features of the human brain. Don't disagree. I stand fully with that. Modern neuroscience rejects the traditional dualist view of volition as a causal change from the conscious mind or soul to
Which
the
means
brain,
they don't speak in those terms. Go ahead.
to the brain and body. Rather, volition involves brain networks making a series of complex, open decisions between alternative actions. And the pre-SMA, which I'll tell you what that is later, is a key node in the network of areas that contribute to these decisions. Now, my point is, you are your brain, and that node that they're talking about, you had no control of its development. That is all based on genetics and environmental influences. That is my point.
Okay.
I'm
yeah,
done.
but the statement that you just read, right? What the expression, what it was saying in terms of the actions. We talk about these actions of volition, is that they have no connection within science, right? From a scientific perspective, they have no connection to the concept of the soul or consciousness. I think that is the overall statement that's trying to be made, right? So science is saying throw the soul out the window, throw the consciousness out the window when we're talking about these voluntary actions. They're not speaking in those terms, and they don't contribute voluntary actions to either consciousness or soul. Okay.
So if somebody makes an argument that I consciously make those voluntary actions, we already know science is saying that's not what's going on. That is my point. So if you say I make a conscious decision, you've already violated what we just read.
It's a point of clarity
I
right
also that's good clarity. I'm glad you cleared that part up, because I actually did use the word consciousness to make one of my analogies earlier, right? But I'm feel like I'm clearly been saying the whole time that any of those brain processes are still mine. Even if you go as far as to reduce my desires to what my brain wants, well, that's still me. It's still me.
But you're not separate from the brain, right?
No.
So if you're not separate from the brain, I ask again, when did you choose the brain you got? When did you select the genetics? When did you select the environmental influence that caused the changes? When did you change the plasticity of your brain? None of those things you have control over.
Right.
So I need
And
to
then
know when
in the very next
gain
sentence clears it
control.
up. It calls these decisions open. Open decisions. Does it not? I didn't say I'm controlling my brain. I mean, I didn't say I'm controlling all these outside factors. I'm saying that I am my brain. And even if these are just brain processes, it's still me.
So
I've
you
heard
want to make so
I've
you
heard
want to so you want to
I've
make
heard
the
one
argument.
scientist describe it as I am under the tyranny of my own neurons. Like all of that process is me.
So
However you
again,
word that, you got separating that from me.
okay, again.
If you try to
So
say it's
where
my brain
does
that wants carbs, well, that's me.
okay? So where is free will? Let's go back to what the definition, what they're actually saying.
I think we get into the
I'm
nitty gritty. I think we
I'm
Let's
get
go
into
not
the
back
rubber
to
trying
meeting
to
the
what
get
they're
road.
caught
saying.
up. I'm not
I
trying
think
to get caught up in
the
the
brother actually
definition
reading the
of
room.
free
This is
will.
good. This is good.
Get out the
This
fight.
is
Let
good.
him
This
go.
is
Let him
very
go.
good. That's why I wanted him to read just the first couple sentences so we could stay right there.
You cannot take two sentences out of a scientific
You did?
peer-reviewed journal. I didn't. I responded to Brendan. And when you said read the conclusion, I said sure. And I read the whole conclusion. And when you listen to the whole conclusion, it makes it very clear that there are two things that people are saying that article that you wanted me to get for you is going against. And you keep saying against your own source. Your source said no consciousness can be evolved in volition, nor can a soul or any aspect of dualism. If you say that is true, then you have to explain to me where free will is outside of the properties of the actual operations of the brain. And if you cannot show it outside of that, then you have to show me where you can control that mechanism, that brain. Because
Right. Again,
basically,
that's
base
exactly why the article is important because it's also saying that they're choosing not to use that sort of a language, right? So when you reintroduce it to try to force me to do it, then you are also like going outside of it. They're absolutely not speaking in those type of terms.
but you are.
When did I all I did was read it and emphasize a couple words here and there.
Because when you say I'm making a I got to go back to it. Every time we've been in a Discord on the live chat in the Discord, and you say I'm making a conscious decision, you've already moved outside the realm of science and moved into dualism. And that doesn't mean that there are scientists that are dualism. I want to make it clear. There are scientists that are dualism, right? And they're weighing in absolutely on the conversation. So when you use Chat GBT, it doesn't distinguish between the Christian, Islamic, religious scientists. It don't distinguish between the dualists, and it don't distinguish between the naturalists. It's going to give you all of the conversation. And what I'm saying is, based on what we are saying, what I understand from the position of those who are hard determinists, we have found no place where the natural biological processes can be changed by any illusion of a will, free will, consciousness, or soul. That is my position. If you find it differently, show it to me, and I'll be more than happy to make my adjustment.
No, I mean I get what you're saying, but I know what you're also doing, right? Like you're trying to bog me down back into the philosophical when I'm definitely trying my best to at least show what let science weigh in on it, right? So whereas they may not use that language, they clearly call the action voluntary, right? You can also look at the responsibility for action, and whereas I mean I'm not sure why he chooses the word, but he does choose the word. It says all All known human cultures have a concept that individuals is responsible for society for their actions. This in turn rests on a concept of volition. Individuals control their own actions, and their conscious knowledge of what they are doing should allow them to choose between right and wrong actions. I mean, I'm not saying it, right? I'm at least letting the scientists say it. You get what I'm saying? But that is kind of what it says, bro. I mean, you can fight the article, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not coming up with the terms. I'm not making it like that. But you're trying to take me outside of that and have to respond in some philosophical way where it clearly says voluntary, clearly says responsible for their own actions. I mean, that's where I'm at.
Well, you both are at a certain position. And folks, we have come to that point where we are going to continue the conversation at another time. We don't want to bog you all down. We also want you all to um, kind of let what has been said here marinate so you can definitely understand the conversation when we return to it. Again, we will be having a debate between Marcus and Logic on free will coming soon, and we will definitely let you all know the specifics once we get those squared away. Also, to remind the audience, and of course, we didn't do any shout outs, but I want to thank each and every last one of you for always supporting, even the adversaries, even our contrarians. We appreciate you all for supporting our platform and these conversations, these types of conversations. So remember, also PK will be continuing its quote unquote broadcasting as far as our galaxy and beyond, and um, 7.5 Lessons of the Brain, or the Brain Show, the Brain Conversation. We will be gearing that back up starting Sunday for the Brain Show and Wednesday for our Galaxy and Beyond. And plus, we probably have some hot new topics that we definitely will be bringing to you with some provocative, very interesting conversations to back that. So, I try to give you gentlemen the last. I don't want to keep going. Anybody else want to have anything to say on the panel before I cut to the cue music? But again, thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon for
Yeah,
this conversation on free will.
I just want to close out with a statement, and then we can let everybody else discuss this. This is from the very first uh, paragraph from the same article we've been using.
Make it quick. We got 8 minutes.
Okay, I got you. Everyday language suggests that I consciously choose to perform actions and that my choice somehow causes the action to occur. This language is dualistic and it implies a mental I that is distinct from both the brain and the body, but that can nevertheless trigger brain events and thus bodily movements. I stand totally against that idea. That is my final statement.
Cool. Logic, do you have a final statement or are you good with that?
Let somebody else go. I'm getting to it. I'm
That's
pulling it
fine.
up.
Anybody else have anything to say? I'm pretty much, standing my ground, and I'm just looking at what the science says, and the scientists are saying things, and this is one of the reasons to let you all know why we even started these shows on the brain, because we were getting into this convo about free will, right? And there's nothing worse than having a conversation where the people that you're speaking to or with really have no conceptualization of the terms, the nuances, everything that is implied in that conversation. So in order to make sure that us ourselves and the audience had a full handle on whatever it is needed to really understand and make a sound, decision on where they stood on this, we had to get you all educated on the brain, how the brain functions, evolutionary processes, and even into a little neuroscience, right? And how decision making occurs and things of that nature. So this is how and why we started to do the shows on the brain, starting, but not just limited to Lisa Feldman Barrett's 7.5 Lesson about the brain was just a start, because we all felt that that was a pretty easy read, very clear and concise, before we got into Sam Harris and Robert Sapolsky, which their arguments get a little bit more complicated. Okay. So this is the reason for it. And we will be continuing, probably starting with a new publication on said subject matter. And it's not so much as a book club or book report as it is we are taking what the experts are saying and applying it to our daily conversations on different subject matters. But we have to have that source material, and as pseudo killers, as we do, we're going to refer to the experts, and as we like to do, the consensus. And of course, this particular conversation is a very complicated with that notion. But with that said, Logic, I'm gonna let you have the first say, and
Right. I'm gonna try to be quick. Right. So I'm gonna just read the definition one more time, make it clear of as far as what I'm actually fighting against. Right. In philosophy, determinism in philosophy and science, the thesis that all events in the universe, including human decisions and actions, are causally inevitable. Right. Determinism entails that in a situation when a person makes a decision or performs a certain action, it is impossible for them to him or he or her to have made any other decision or performed another action, right? That does not leave any room for you to make any sort of decisions. And yet we literally just read where a scientist would call these decisions open and having alternative actions, right? Like that's, to me, that's not very hard to understand what science is saying um, against compatibilism. They refuse to use me against determinism. So they refuse to get caught up in these slippery definitions which move all over the place, but they absolutely stand very firm in calling these actions voluntary, right? So one of my favorite philosophers, and since he didn't really address it, I kind of fell back and I didn't try to force it on him, is P.F. Strawson, right? Because P.F. Strawson reminds me of what we have to give up in order to hold the position of determinism, right? What P.F. Strawson says, Strawson's essay is famous for his use of the attitudes of gratitude, resentment, moral indignation, love, and forgiveness, which in determinism are described as meaningless. Right? To me, I don't understand how I could even go about trying to describe my experience without these things. Some of this subjective reality is literally interwoven into me, right? Like this is a part of my experience. This is a part of how I describe what's actually going on. People have intentional actions, they have unintentional actions, and we base these things based on our perspective. And you can't throw that out the window or reduce it down to chemical components or processes into the brain because you won't get the full picture, and that's just the bottom line to it. Like you can't reduce it all the way down to only these chemicals, but you can definitively say that these chemicals and brain processes are playing a role, but you can't fully dismiss all the subjectivity that I'm actually experiencing. And that's kind of what I'm fighting against, right? Because when you put that in there, right, I now have to reorganize how I feel about things like equality, like racism, right? Right, like reparations and things like that. I'm now my sentiments become meaningless, and I don't believe that he believes that's actually the case. I feel like he's having this position that he feels is, I don't know if it's necessary or not, or I don't even understand why it's appealing to him. But hopefully that'll be, one of the main topics that we get to address and talk about with everybody in the near future.
All right, well, that's the bottom line.
That was a beautiful dualist argument. I love it.
Hey,
Well,
Judy,
that
let
was
me
the
get a little bit. Hold on, let me get a little
Come
bit.
on, you got 30 seconds. Get the little bit.
Damn, y'all. All right, but no, look. So I appreciate my brother, Logic, man. That is my friend, what you stated earlier. And this ain't the Egyptian joint. You know what I'm saying? We ain't gonna never fall out behind this argument or disagreement or whatever we have. And much respect to Marcus too, and brilliant mind Brendan, and Sister Safa and Juju, and everybody else that was on the panel. I'm just glad we even able to have this
Definitely
type of
Miss
conversation.
Tiffany. Miss Tiffany brought
Yeah,
that
Miss
heat today.
Tiffany.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely Miss Tiffany and
Absolutely.
Brother Aunt. You know what I mean? I'm just glad that we're able to talk about this even as a discussion, because we know what the community's been bogged down with, man. So I just appreciate all of y'all on that point, and that's all I got, man.
Right.
All right.
I'll close out as well. You say thanks to the panel. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to Marcus and Logic. You guys are, really standing on. You're refining your stances, and I really enjoy, because you're going through the sources. You guys have a grasp of the terminology, and I think it's a fascinating conversation. Shout out to you, Juju. You're becoming a social media personality in your own right, sister. He said you're doing you did a great job sort of moderating the panel tonight, and you say that was great. But what I would say, with me, I consider myself sort of a hard scientist, and some of the people on the hard science side say, okay, well, what's the value of having these philosophical conversations, right? You're just like, okay, it's very easy to throw those into the waste basket, right? When you're saying, oh, I've got lab work to do, I've got scientific computations to execute, right? But what I would say, there are some values in terms of having these philosophical conversations, and I'll list a few, right? So when you're talking about critical thinking skills, right? Philosophical conversations actually help to actually promote and develop critical thinking, problem solving as well in the same right? Communication skills, right? Building communication skills amongst each other, communicating as a group, right? Being able to effectively argue and use logic in that way, right? Is going to affect the communication skills, right? Ethical and moral reasoning, right? One of the key aspects in philosophy is ethics, right? What are the ethical implications? What are the social implications? What are the personal responsibilities? We talked about that earlier on, right? So there's benefits there, right? Self-understanding, right? Understanding, like say, the identity of the self. We talked about, okay, well, in terms of some of the things you guys are talking about, how does that help me personally identify? Right. So personal identification, right? Personal growth, right? Those are aspects. Right? Cultural understanding, right? Being able to say, okay, from a cultural perspective, right? We talked about the idea of the free will, right? The idea of the free will started way back in ancient Greece in the early first century with Aristotle. So we're talking, we're having a cultural conversation as well. And it also, I think above all, it promotes open-mindedness. So with that, I just leave it at that. That's some of the benefits of having these philosophical conversations.
Facts. And thank you for that, because I think that was some great important points on why we are having the discussion. So I appreciate that. Well, thank you to everybody on the panel. And with that said, no more shall be said at this point. We'll see you next time. Good night, y'all. That was cute.
Yeah, it's DQ, baby. Pseudo killers, what up? Check. Tapping in, what's the subject? Evolution or revolution, we ain't done yet. Laying flat like Sanchez, this a bomb threat. I know my flow like Angozi. Source up and show me, homie. You shut up and mute up a moment. The mad scientist, I'm knowing all the components. We own it, and we gon' off it if it's pseudo. You do know we don't entertain that keyboard judo. That big Bobby banger out of Baltimore. Done it all, shopper folks. Sold a little something, but I taught you more than your average teacher. I had to reach you at your level to bring you up. No devil can never beat you. With precision of a magi, the information supplied by some guys get debunked online. CK and Juju, I chill in the cut. But if you boys wanna fade, then I'm chefing you up. High organized lie, the defeats a disorganized truth every time. Kudos, who those niggas? Decorated pseudo killers. Space age Africans, back again. An organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Kudos, who those niggas? Decorated pseudo killers. Space age Africans, tapping in. I always been fly, that's an actual omen. You can catch me in the sky, ask Anthony Bowman. He see me with his telescope, I was actually floating off some good kush that Sabio is actually growing. See, Gullah Gullah and Kent is where the money gets spent. Them boys got some books that cost as much as your rent. The second verse should be smash rock well, but I rock well. Underground like Sumerian rock whales. In the ring like I'm the rock whale. Hell, create a different wave that can rock whales. Hell, shit swell like lunar tides. My entendres off Gandra to who describe. Euthanize foolish guys. Scholastically, haphazardly. Turn your camera on and look me in my eyes. And please do subscribe. 8 to 80, blind, cripple, or crazy. You in for a new surprise. It's DQ, a organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Kudos, who those niggas? Decorated pseudo killers. Space age Africans, back again. An organized lie defeats a disorganized truth every time. Kudos, who those niggas? Decorated pseudo killers. Space age Africans, tapping in.